A girl with snow-white hair sits in a dark room. Only the moonlight illuminates the bed. Tears flow in streams down her cheeks, and she tries to wipe them with the edges of the hem of her nightgown. The blue-eyed girl felt bad and, of course, lost. The wind gently blew on her face and hair. Suddenly, a rustling sound was heard. The heroine almost immediately turned around and noticed the figure of a man in the window. The brunette calmly looked at the beauty. His dark eyes glowed in the moonlight, and on his head was a cape, carefully hiding his identity. The woman gasped, "Kazan!" The young man walked quietly towards the bed, at which time the lady jumped up and carefully looked around. She was obviously afraid that someone would notice them. Precautions always meant a lot to them. The blonde pulled the curtain near her bed, and after making sure that everything was fine, she turned to Kazan. The dark-haired man took off his hood. Almost immediately, the hero's expression changed. The man rushed to the girl and gently hugged her, kissing her forehead. She calmly exhaled. The tears dried on her face. Finally, calm came. Ilona was happy to see the young man. Sitting down on the bed, Kazan adjusted the blue-eyed girl's hair. They could chat or do something more interesting. However, they did not have much time at their disposal. "Ilona, let's get straight to the point." Not long ago, a piece of news spread throughout the kingdom, so the hero immediately asked the question that was worrying him. He doubted it until the very end. "Are you really marrying the king of Valhallan?" The lady's hands were shaking as she tried to justify herself. Kazan had to understand that the lady had to leave the palace. At least in this way, she had no choice. "If I didn't leave now, I might die at the hands of my brother." Red-Eyed nodded, but still objected. They agreed to run away together. If they left Parshan that night, nothing would happen. The girl turned away. "Do you think this is possible?" The lovers, unfortunately, had no power. If they were caught by the lady's brother, even death would have seemed the best option, because they would have been tortured. An exclamation was heard. "I will not allow it to come to this." Attempts to explain were unsuccessful, because a weak voice interrupted Kazan. He repeatedly said that he would do everything for Ilona. She promised to trust him, but it seemed that this was another lie. The brunette changed his confidence to the fact that he was never believed at all. No matter what he did, the blue-eyed girl sadly lowers her head. She has nothing to answer to the statement. Hands reached for the cape. The handsome man pulls it off his shoulders and quietly asks if this is true about him, because he is a slave, and the shackles that indicate him are visible on his neck. Blue-eyed never intended to leave with him. She only led him by the nose, planning to marry another, a complete stranger to her. In time, it is clear that she is ashamed. "Hate me if you want it." The hero's hand fell on the girl's leg. It gradually rose up. The lady wants only one thing from him. The young man pushed her onto the bed, pressing her down with his body from above. "What are you doing, Kazan?" The woman groaned, but quickly tried to suppress her desire. They should remember that they were not somewhere in a closed place. They were still in His Majesty's palace. The lady refused to continue, but they did not understand her. Why not? Finally, the slave pulled away. He was not going to do anything to his beloved against her will. Pain was visible in his eyes, and then tears rolled down his cheeks. "I am ready to do everything for you. Why can't you do anything?" The blonde couldn't hold back either. She really felt sorry that they were in this situation. To calm the young man down a little, she puts her hand on his cheek, but then, with all her might, someone opens the curtain near the bed. The man behind whom the guard stands grins maliciously. This is what indicated that nothing good should be expected. He chuckles. "The princess really got involved with a pathetic slave. I was right." The girl's brother orders to capture both of them. Ilona tries to stop his actions, but nothing works. He was determined to finish what he started. One of the guards grabbed the princess first. He dragged her to the side, while Kazan was hit on the head. Blood spurted in all directions, and then a scream was heard. "Enough." The green-eyed man continued to grin. He ordered that the young man be thrown into the dungeon immediately. At dawn, he would appear before the court, and then it would be decided what would happen to him next. Looking again at the hero, from whom blood continued to flow, the prince chuckled. It was clear that execution awaited him. Horror was reflected on the lady's face. This was exactly what she was afraid of. The guard let the woman go. Almost immediately, she rushed forward and fell to her knees in front of the blonde man. Tears began to flow again, and she begged that Kazan be pardoned. "If you pardon him, I am ready for anything." The green-eyed man chuckled. Of course it was all for show. He had already decided what he was going to do, coming closer to his sister. But he still clarified, "You are ready for anything, even if it means depriving you of everything." Blue-eyed raised her head. All sincerity was visible in her eyes. Even if she loses everything, she is ready to save Kazan. He deserves a better life, and deserves to live. The next day, the castle was in an uproar from the very morning. The king was raging because of his daughter's abrupt announcement. Are you going to break off your engagement with the king of Valhallan because of some slave? Approaching the girl, the gentleman pushed her away with all his strength with his foot, causing her to fall, enduring the pain. The lady cleared her throat and tried to explain that in her heart there really was already another man. His Majesty was not going to calm down. He was clenching his teeth in pain from anger. Because of the girl, he would have to return all the gold that the groom candidate sent to the kingdom. You still haven't come to your senses. The prince, who himself forced Ilona to confess, was of course present in the hall. He addressed the gentleman, considering that since the lady had disgraced the honor of Parshan, she deserved severe punishment. The ruler nodded. He didn't think long about what to do with the girl. He ordered the guards to seize his own daughter and then lock her up in the eastern tower, where there's almost no sunlight. Ilona will not step outside the boundaries for the rest of her days. She no longer has the right to a voice. The woman tried to save face, although in her soul she was hurt because of her brother's cruelty and her father's indifference. Because of the reality that suddenly fell upon her, the lady really felt uneasy. She understood that it would only get worse. Tears flowed down her cheeks, but the ability to smile remained with her until the very end. The most important thing is that in the end, the lady managed to protect Kazan, the one who, for many years now, had truly been the only warm ray in her life, as cold as winter. The lady's life promised to be miserable, but she kept telling herself that for the sake of saving her beloved, she would accept any sentence with joy. She thought that everything would end there, but it was not so. In the middle of the night, several horses were walking across the field. Ilona was sitting on one of them, and her brother was riding next to her. The maiden looked around doubtfully, only to ask later, "Did Kazan leave safely?" The prince didn't even bother to look the girl in the eyes. He knew what they were going to do. His answer was cold. He was probably already on his way. The blue-eyed girl had no choice but to nod. After a while, Ilona again quietly turned to her brother. It seemed the direction they were following did not lead them to the eastern tower. In response, a grin. The lady guessed everything. "You want to say goodbye to your slave, right?" The lady was not given the opportunity to answer. Parshan Sr. was not just following first. He had a mission that he was going to fulfill. And so, right on the move, he took out his blade, because the tall figure of Kazan froze in front of him. Despite all the prayers of the beauty, right before her eyes, her lover was killed. The last thing she remembered was how the sword pierced him, touching all the important vital organs. At that moment, the princess's heart broke. The lady remembered when it all started. One day, she came to the site with her brother. He ordered her to choose who the arrow would be shot at, while he impatiently pulled the string of his bow and ignored requests to stop. To give the lady a little push, the young man launched one of the arrows, which pierced a wooden post a millimeter from the white-haired slave's face, and she cowered in fear. The insistent voice addressed the sister again. The master was intent on saving the one the blue-eyed girl would choose. There were several slaves on the site, whose lives, of course, were the last thing on his mind. The girl falls to her knees, fear in her eyes, which is quite justified. She begs to save everyone who remains tied up. She will never again tell her father that Parshan did something wrong. The green-eyed man snorted. Of everything the lady said, he only noticed that instead of calling the ruler His Majesty, she called him father. "Do you think that because you are the child of the great empress, you are somehow different from me? In any case, the girl's mother died a long time ago. There is no point in saying anything." Ilona began to scream that she would stand in place of the slaves. It would be better for her to become a new target. They definitely won't shoot an arrow at her. The prince was constantly angry with his sister, even when he didn't say it openly. And since he felt that way, he'd better vent his anger directly. He chuckled and agreed. "Okay, that's a great idea." It was probably much more fun to play with Ilona than with those people from Ashitra. The lady no longer paid attention to anything. The most important task was to send everyone away so that they would not get caught in the crossfire. The blonde quickly untied the slaves from the posts, turning to Kazan and Samira. She ordered them to take everyone and leave. The brunette was the only one who was against it. He didn't like the idea of leaving the princess alone. The heroine turned away. Even if Antonio is ready to kill all the slaves, she has no right to allow this to happen. She does not want anyone to suffer because of her brother. She is of course afraid, but remains confident. "Do not worry about me. Go away." Kazan tries to object, but Samira grabs his hand in time and pulls him back. The princess is right. They will help only if they leave. Otherwise, they will also fall into harm's way. Antonio did not want to wait any longer. He pulled his bow and called his sister. The order not to move was heard almost immediately. If the lady died, he would not be able to take on such responsibility. A second later, the arrow shot forward. The woman felt her whole life flashing before her eyes. As Kazan rushed forward, grabbed her, pressing her to the ground with his body, he could not obey and leave with the others. The blonde angrily clenched his teeth. He asked what kind of person this was who decided to lose his life by jumping forward. The brunette did not pay attention. Instead, he put his hands on Elon's shoulders. "Are you okay?" The blue-eyed girl did not understand why she needed to be saved. The man had no reason for this. Now the young man would be in danger. And yet the prince even agreed to let the slaves go, no longer mocking them. The young man looked calmly at the lady. He reminded her of the promise he had made to the beauty a long time ago, when he had promised that he would take the beauty out of the palace in complete safety, and he was going to keep his word. Protecting the princess had long been Kazan's official duty. He wanted to be relied upon, and he stood forward, looking straight into Antonio's eyes. The woman opened her eyes. She looked around. There were tears on her face again, because she was again having that same dream, from which she had managed to get pretty tired. Each time it became more and more difficult. She was very bored. Carefully lowering her feet onto the stone floor of the tower, which had become her new home, the beauty walked to the table and, opening her notebook, began to write. "How long has it been since I dreamed of you, Kazan?" She wrote in this diary constantly. But that day was special. It had been over 7 years since the man from Ashitra died, and the girl was left locked in the tower after her brother became king, life getting worse every day until it became like hell. Without Kazan, the princess became even worse. But in fact, not only her condition, but also the state of the country went for the worse. In a sense, the young man was lucky that he did not live to see the moment when everything happened. When the war with the kingdom of Ashatra began, the oppression from His Majesty became a little less, but in fact the situation did not get any better. It was terrible to realize that it was a war with the country of Kazan. 3 years have passed since the beginning of the war. During this time, many people and friends of the man died. Ilona remained powerless. She could not save either her beloved or anyone else from his people. The blonde always remained locked up, so she had only one option of what she could do. She continued to pray for the terrible war between the two states to end as soon as possible. After some time, it seems that the war was finally over. One fine day, it was announced that Ashatra had won a victory over Parshan. On the same day, an order was given to capture all the courtiers of the country. Of course, the worst of all was to be the members of the royal family. The palace gave the order to kill every single one. Only the princess was going to be sent directly to the castle to the king of Ashitra to receive her future punishment. Blue-Eyed was taken out of the eastern tower. The guards dragged her along the corridor, but she didn't care. Completely different thoughts were spinning in her head. 7 years had already passed since her beloved Kazan left her. The days dragged on endlessly. The lady saw the positive in everything. It seemed that soon she would go straight to him after receiving her reprimand as death. All that was left was to wait and endure the final torture. The door to the main hall of the castle swung open. The knights dragged the princess inside. Almost immediately she cringed, because there were dead people lying around. Blood spread in scarlet spots across the floor, leaving a frightening feeling. Her eyes ran over everyone lying on the tiles. The blonde quickly regretted that she decided not to close her eyes right away. She began to feel sick, so she had to turn away. The guard threw Ilona in front of the stairs that led directly to the throne. Next to her sat her brother, who immediately turned to the ruler, pointing at the girl. "You see, she is alive and well, and now leave me alive, as you promised." The blue-eyed woman felt disgusted, but she was even more confused by the fact that she did not understand at all what was happening. When the gentleman asked if they had promised each other anything, the lady suddenly raised her head. That voice was painfully familiar to her. The ruler continued. Parshan could not really think that he was worthy of forgiveness from the great man. The king who lost the war had no right to compare himself with the winner. Tears naturally accumulated in the corners of the maiden's eyes. She did not immediately notice the face of the person sitting on the throne. But after that, everything fell into place. The emperor of Ashatra is none other than Kazan. The woman no longer cared about what she saw around her. She quietly asked if it was really her lover in front of her. But Antonio interrupted her with his shouts. "How dare you laugh at me?" The blonde accused the ruler of doing something in order to stay alive. He clearly remembered how he killed the slave with his own hands. Kazan interrupted the young man in mid-sentence, because he had no right to talk about such things. The prince remained as stupid as before. Nothing had changed even a little. The gentleman no longer intended to sit still. He stood up and slowly walked down the steps straight to the prisoner. It was worth reminding him of how things really were. Parshan had long been destroyed, and the young man himself was pathetic. Raising his sword, he pierced Antonio's knee. "Tear out his pathetic tongue and lock it in the cart," he ordered. Red Eyes was sure of what he said. When he announced the sentence that had been passed, returning to Ashatru, he would be forced to receive the choice of the Sindar. While the body was being dragged away, the prince begged his sister to save him. The girl looked sad, but in fact, she didn't care. The gentleman turned to her, asking her to raise her head. Their gazes met. But in Kazan, it was as if something had changed, something imperceptible. Ilona must bear responsibility for the defeated country. She is one of the representatives, so it is worth dying for. A new wave of fear lit up in the lady's eyes. The brunette was sincere when he spoke about what he was going to do. But if you think about the pain that the people of Ashatra went through, then Lotta death is a real luxury for her. A second later, heavy shackles fell on Ilona's neck. She was pulled towards him, not giving her the strength to resist. Kazan was hostile, depriving Parshan of the title of princess and ordering her to become a slave in the king's bedroom. Until that moment, the woman had no idea how bad everything was. The chain was handed over to the guards. "Put it in order in my room." The man promised to come there personally. The blonde was dressed in clothes that suited the master's taste, nervously fiddling with her shackles on her neck. She wondered what had happened. The same question was spinning in her head. Is he really alive? The images of the lady crying over her lover's body had not left her since that day. But now they were as vivid as ever, as if the man who had died could not be reborn. The young man not only survived, but also managed to become the ruler of the country. His hands were shaking from misunderstanding. Too many thoughts were creeping into his head. It reached the point of absurdity. Perhaps it was not even Kazan himself. Blue-eyed thought that if it was really Sindar, then she was glad that he was still alive. At that moment, the door swung open. The young man walked inside. He promised to visit the lady, and that is exactly what he did. The brunette noticed the girl's expression almost immediately. With slight disdain, he asked why her face was twisted. Was it strange that I entered through this door? Before this, Kazan always came exclusively through the window. The slave was not allowed into the princess's chambers. The blonde quietly asks again, clarifying whether it is really the same person in front of her. The voice is still rough. You probably want to deny it. The beauty's hand reaches for the young man's cheek. She is happy to see him again, although she still cannot believe what is happening. The lady wanted to say something else, but then her palm was suddenly thrown to the side, scarlet eyes blazing with hatred. "Take your hands away! You make me feel disgusted." Kazan approached his former lover. This time he made the first move. He was always curious about the expression on her face when they finally met. Time passed. The princess remained just as disgusting. The blue-eyed one wanted to step back. She wanted to know why they were treating her like this. There was no answer, only another wave of anger. There was absolutely no strength left to endure what was happening. It was worth stopping this behavior. For a second, it seemed that pain was reflected in the pupils of the young man. Do you think that I don't know anything? The conversation turned to that very night that happened 7 years ago. The hero knows everything that Parshan did. She wants to know more. But this is a mistake. Strong hands grab Ilona by the shoulders. In the blink of an eye, the girl is on the bed. Kazan hangs over her like a cloud. His voice has become even angrier. Let's be true to our roles. The young man kisses the woman without holding back and sticks his tongue into her mouth. Because of the kiss, she mumbles something indistinctly. She manages to push the man away. It seems we have a misunderstanding. Let's talk. Everything has long been put in its place. The slave's conversations will not be listened to. The princess does not understand this, but she is promised that she will be taught a role that suits bedding. The young man continues to press. He presses even closer and talks about how much he has been waiting for this moment. It really has been too much time since the last time they met. Red Eyes spent countless sleepless nights thinking about their future meeting over and over again. He even destroyed the country of Parshan and killed everyone who stood in the way. The hand stops at the wrists and squeezes them. The moment the girl entered the room, she became his slave. The blue-eyed girl continues to moan. She was still able to squeeze out a request. Please, stop. This is not the first time they have slept together, so there is no point in stopping. The heroine continues to ask, but she is ordered to look straight into the eyes and not turn away. Sindar wants to possess the woman forever, and not only in the room they are in, but everywhere. His hand crawls up his leg, leaving traces of his fingers on the pale skin. Only I can touch you. The beauty continues to try to refuse to be touched. This is all nonsense. Her body clearly screams the opposite. Another half-scream escapes from her lips, but the lady thinks to herself that this is exactly what she does not want. The brunette had never behaved like this before. He had always been nice and neat, but now there was only anger left in his eyes. The words love could be completely forgotten. He was like a different person. Despite everything, the princess is happy that her beloved is still alive. For 7 years, she dreamed of being next to him again. So she rises a little and kisses him sharply to express all her emotions. All this time, the beauty did not have the opportunity to even hug the young man, and now she was given what she dreamed of. Maybe the hero really did change. But the main thing is that they are together. When it was all over, the gentleman fell asleep next to Ilona. There was nothing to do. She realized that he would now misunderstand her. If only he had heard the story, he would definitely become the same. Preparations began early in the morning. People crowded around the carts, which were gradually being loaded. Noise could be heard all around. Finally, the return home. We are returning. One of the guards throws the lady into one of the carts. He says, "Have a good trip," but he doesn't really mean it. Because there is bile in his voice. Slaves should be treated carelessly. You deserve it. The blue-eyed one blinks painfully, and just like that, they set off for the place they will call home. The lady tries to sit down, but everything hurts. Kazan has never tortured her like this. A voice is heard behind the doors, and not just one. Someone asks why the girl was not killed immediately, because it is obvious that it would have been easier. Many Parsionians killed the people of Ashatra. This will be retribution. The heroine will die in any case almost immediately as she sets foot on the desert land. She should be dealt with before arriving. The entrance opens. Several knights are visible there. The man's gaze connects with the princess's gaze, and immediately a cold voice puts everything in its place. So that's why His Majesty ordered her to be brought back alive? Milady came out of the faces, but this should not change the situation. Knowing that the blood of enemies flows in her, the heroine should have been finished off. The gentleman simply could not figure out his intentions. The chief's cousin had been killed by a squad from the kingdom, so now revenge would be taken for him. The young man drew his sword from its sheath and pointed it straight at the cowering slave. The girl is obliged to ask death, and perhaps then something will change. The blade rises above the lady's head. It becomes clear to her that this is the end. I just met Kazan. How is that possible? A rough but painfully familiar voice is heard. The ruler appeared behind you. Are you tired of living or what? He is outraged by the fact that the knights dared to disobey his order. Those gathered immediately begin to stutter as they try to justify themselves before His Majesty. They assure that the man is thinking in the wrong direction. Perhaps what is happening simply seemed to him. Kazan doesn't answer. He grabs the chain and pulls the blonde closer to him. It hurts her. A sigh escapes her lips. But it seems the young man doesn't care about anything except what's happening. He won't ask unnecessary questions. The hand gently falls on the chin. The eyes carefully examine the beauty's face. After a second, they let go. It seems that you are not hurt anywhere. The lady cannot answer anything. She is simply silent. The brunette turns to his first assistant. The slave is ordered to be transferred to the carriage, and from now on, the whole way, to keep her next to him. Provide security so that no one dares to touch her under any circumstances. The girl must be properly taken care of. Otherwise, unfortunately, everyone will be to blame for her loss. The knight, bowing his head and crossing his arms on his chest, promises that he will do everything as ordered. Time dragged on. It seemed like an eternity. Finally, it was announced that the detachment had crossed the border of Ashatra. The camp should be set up at the place of the stop, because the sun was gradually setting below the horizon. The blonde didn't pay attention to the noise around her. She sat huddled into a ball and huddled in the corner of the carriage. A dark-haired woman opened the door and she spoke. "Come here. His Majesty is looking for you." Once outside, the lady almost immediately sank into the sand. It was very soft there. Her attention was scattered across the bottomless expanses. Now it became clear to her what exactly Ashatra was. The dark-haired one screamed, "What are you standing there for? Come quickly after me." There was no other choice but to ask for forgiveness and move forward. She asked if the slave knew who she served. After all, Kazan was the king, the chosen one of the god of Sindar. There were memories in the back of her mind. The man once mentioned something similar when they were relaxing together in the field. The young man decided to tell her that in his country, not everyone can become a ruler. Then the lady did not understand and clarified. In Ashtra, to become a king, it was absolutely necessary to receive the election of God. In their country, magic and faith coexist. They are closely intertwined, so that it seems impossible to separate them. The first one is the goddess of the earth and power, Kalima. She is revered by absolutely everyone in the kingdom. Next is the goddess of fire and wisdom, Zakara, who is no less important. The god of water and life, Lu, is the one worshipped by many monks and has existed since ancient times. The last in the line is the god of wind and death, Cinder. The king must be chosen by one of these gods. Otherwise, it is not possible to replace the ruler. Then he will be able to use the power of that god. The people of Ashatri live in deserts. They are impenetrable and thirst for the deaths of others. But it is precisely because of the blessing that they never lose hope. They always believe in the most favorable outcome. Red-Eyed mentioned that the war for the throne lasted for several long years, something that had never happened before. Because of this, the Ashatrians were driven away to other countries, where they suffered in slavery. Then the beauty tried to support her lover. Placing her hand on his palm, she noticed that it bothered him. Someday she should definitely visit his country. The brunette smiled and kissed the girl on the forehead, nodded. The memories make my soul heavy. The stranger with dark hair pulls me out of my thoughts. Although someone like the princess is unworthy of Kazan, I have to carry out God's order, so I have to do everything from the heart. His Majesty, perhaps the only one who managed to survive the curse of God. The lady was driven into a tent in which there were some baskets, change clothes, and go out. She was given another order. Blue-Eyed goes to one of the baskets and takes out a thing from there. It immediately becomes clear that there is a Kshatriyan clothing there. There is nothing left to do but change clothes. The first thing that falls to the ground is a skirt. The beauty wanted to continue, but then she noticed something moving in the things. She didn't have to wait long. The scorpion's tail appeared. The princess screamed and jumped to the side to save herself. The lady did not immediately understand what had happened. Her hands were shaking, but she confidently reached for the shelf. They said that in Ashatra, animals can be poisonous. It is worth acting quickly to stay safe. The basket lands right on the scorpion, dropping to her knees. The princess breathes a sigh of relief. She is lucky that the reaction was immediate. A few minutes later, the dressing was finished. The brunette took the beauty from the tent and led her forward before entering. She raised her voice, "Sir, I have brought a prisoner." As soon as they were let in, the lady bowed her head and crossed her arms, greeting them. Kazan was busy signing documents, and without taking his eyes off the assistant, turned to her. "You can go." The brunette didn't like this. However, she had no right to object to Sindar. Leaving them alone, she went out. The gentleman turns to the princess. "Your clothes. Did someone attack you again?" Blue-eyed looks at her not quite neat appearance, she explains. An animal with claws got into her clothes. Attempts to dodge ended almost successfully, not counting the stains left on the hem. Sindar nods. It could have been dangerous, but the lady was lucky. The heroine nods. "You warned me yourself. A long time ago, the young man said that Asatrian animals can be poisonous. They should be feared." The girl can't help but thank him. Last time she was saved when the knight almost cut her throat. A drop of gratitude can be seen in her eyes, although the lady still doesn't understand why she was saved. The red-eyed man snorts arrogantly. In fact, he did not save the lady. It was all just a stupid illusion that made the heroine think in a different direction. The young man touches her with his hand and abruptly unties the dress. A moment later, the hero presses the slave against the wall, continuing to raise his voice. "I did not save you. The girl was punished for daring to touch what belongs to Sindar. It was more correct. Like any other slave, the lady is a truly valuable commodity that must be handled with care." The heroine's hands are shaking. She is again caught up in the wave of fear that has enveloped her unexpectedly. The blonde finds the strength to squeeze out at least something. She assumes that it is all because of an incident that happened 7 years ago, something that was impossible to forget. It was imprinted in the memory for a long time. On the night, 5 years ago, the heroine came to the man and said those very words that decided everything between them. She still regretted that she did not express her thoughts in a clearer context. Then Kazan was in prison. The days dragged on endlessly. He had to wait for his fate. At night, Ilona made her way to him. She approached the bars and quietly called her lover by name in order to attract his attention. Almost immediately, the hero jumped up and came closer. He extended his hand and gently touched the princess's cheek. Kazan assured that he was fine. He was interested in whether Antonio had beaten the girl, as he usually did. The blonde pulled away. As it turned out, she came for a completely different reason. The woman lowers her head and announces the truth. "I've been lying to you all this time." Kazan doesn't understand what's going on. He asks again in concern. The young man wants to know if the lady is okay, but she seems not herself. Throwing away her lover's hand, she screams that she does not want to listen to anything. She delivers the final blow. "I never loved you." In the end, what was happening was too good to be true. The princess could not fall in love with a slave. She was higher in status and had to find a partner for herself from those who were suitable for her in the high society of the aristocracy. Finding his last strength, the man began to ask. He was not going to leave everything just like that. He certainly did not like this. The brunette asked if the princess is doing this because of her brother. She waved her hand. "I'm doing this sincerely." Blue-eyed strikes another blow below the belt. She never wanted to run away with Kazan. She never dreamed of a foreign country and never believed him. The woman was about to leave. "If you manage to survive, never come to me again." The heroine remembered the past. It was logical why the young man resisted her so much, knowing that she had betrayed him in the past. The blonde can only justify herself. She does not know whether they will believe her words. However, it is worth trying. Antonio forced Parshan to do what she did not want. He said that if the lady would send a letter of annulment to King Bahalan and live in the tower as if it did not exist, then he would leave the slave alive and even allow him to leave. The future ruler did not trust his sister, so when she went into the dungeon, he followed her. He remembered his words and expected that the girl would break off any relationship with the young man. Before the lady went to the last conversation, the blonde gave her clear instructions. Tell her that you don't know if you'll meet again and that you don't want to see this scum ever again. To force the princess to choose the option that suited him, the master said that if Kazan survived, they might meet again someday. But if the relationship was not broken, Sindar would definitely be killed. The blue-eyed woman looked at the ruler with hope. She told the whole story and expected at least a drop of understanding from him. But all that met her was a cold look from scarlet eyes. Sadness descended on her. You don't believe me, I see. Not wanting to be nearby, the brunette turned away and spoke. He asks if Ilona knows why he became the king of Ashatra. Of course, she does not know the answer, all because of the feeling of hatred that unconditionally consumed the man. The feeling of anger grew with each passing day. It manifested itself towards Parshun and his king. And in the midst of all this, there was also the princess, who had once set the young man against herself, although they had previously been in a relationship. While the hero was speaking, he gradually threw chains on the girl's hands and neck. Soon he pulls her towards him and continues, I hated you more than anyone. The blonde tries to push away, assuring that she made the right move, all for Kazan. The expression on her face remains unchanged. The heroine cannot seriously think that they will believe her. She did everything so that now the man would have no reason to trust her. Now she must reap the benefits. The young man pushes the beauty away with his hand. She falls onto the sofa, which is in the middle of the tent. Attempts to prevent the inevitable only provoke the master. Don't be so impudent, you are still my slave. Resistance still has a peculiar effect. The brunette understands that nothing will work this way. He grabs the bottle with his hand and then pours the liquid on the fragile body. There is nothing left to do but find weak points. The blue-eyed girl screams. She wanted to ask what Kazan was doing, so she carefully asks the question, not even really hoping for anything else. The young man grins. He stretches his hands to the body. Even though Ilona became a high-quality bedslave, her problem remained exactly the same. She is very weak. Her body is not able to withstand what the master expects. Just because of a short trip to another country, the lady's body has become completely hardened, and therefore he cannot take her, although he would like to. The tongue gently touches the leg that the man has raised up. The hand presses lightly on the chest, and then moves down to the stomach. The princess continues to mumble that she doesn't want anything, but Kazan doubts it. From the expression on the girl's face, one can say that everything is quite the opposite. Blue-eyed began to feel even stranger. She can't move. It feels like even her mind is clouded. Sindar takes advantage of this opportunity and gently touches her neck with his tongue. So that's where your weakness is. Until the very end, the heroine does not want to admit that she likes it a little. The red-eyed man confidently declares that he is not going to stop. I like your expression. The despair in your gaze. The young man had wanted something like this to happen for a long time. The last of his strength was leaving the beauty's body. Please don't say that. Don't make me push you away anymore. His eyes closed. His head sank onto the pillow. Sindar walked away. A rustling sound was heard behind the tent, which forced him to ask if there was someone outside. Come in. It turns out that the same brunette who had brought the slave on orders had been there all this time. The woman wants to ask what the master needs, and he calmly asks to bring more oil and bed linen. The girl raises her eyebrows in displeasure. She does not believe that the oil was used for the bed slave. It is impossible not to notice that the oil is precious. It is used to calm the emperor's nerves. And here the bar has been lowered significantly. The man interrupts his assistant. He does not want to listen to discontent. The bed slave exists precisely to calm the ruler, so she has every right to receive a sedative. Otherwise, Sindar will not be able to fully enjoy himself. The next day, the carts finally reach the kingdom of Ashatra, Perma. A huge number of people gathered in the streets. All around you can hear the hum. Everyone is singing the praises of the master, who, with the help of the power of God, was able to end the war. Sindar waves. They ask him to bless the people, and of course he does. The carts move further along the main street. The knights guard the last cart with the slave so that she does not dare to escape. The girl opens the window a little and looks around. Perma, she has to admit, is really a beautiful city. It became weak because of the civil war. But Ashatra is much richer than Parshan. Coming to such a far north place was difficult, but there were several things that the beauty learned during her journey. The first is the tattoo on Kazan's hand. It means that he received a blessing from God. The second is the reprimand Sindar. It is the same as receiving the death penalty. Kazan will use it for the sinner. It seems even more terrible than if the person was killed in the usual way. The blonde did not know all the details, but she also noticed that people were afraid when they talked about God's punishment. For them, Kazan was God. The girl had to find out the detailed information from the gentleman. The princess was distracted from her thoughts by nothing other than a stone that flew right into her window. The people were outraged. The people from Parshan irritated them to the depths of their souls. Someone from the crowd briskly suggested pulling everyone out of the cart and making them feel all the pain that their comrades had experienced. Screams from the Parshionians who were there could be heard in the street, mocking them. The woman did not immediately realize that there were children among those brought in, and without thinking twice, she attempted to open the door. She needed to save at least the little ones. A few blows with the shoulder, and here the beauty flies with a swing onto the hot road. The princess hears a quiet voice. A man, located a meter away from her, hoarsely asks for help. It doesn't take more than a few seconds before the people of Ashatra notice Parshan. They offer to kill the girl. They throw stones at her. But she is determined to help that night. Blue-eyed waits for the young man to climb into the carriage. The lady asks if he is okay, and asks about the children. It turns out that while they made a stop, the king of Ashatra took them. The girl relaxed a little. She was glad that Kazan was still taking care of the little children, which meant that not all was lost. A scream is heard from behind. A man from the street rushes from behind, raising a stone over his head. The beauty's whole life flashes before her eyes. A knight in a red cloak jumps forward. He protects Parshan. The general orders everyone to stop. The maiden was chosen by the Almighty, which means harming her is the same as questioning the king's authority. Keep that in mind. Immediately, the mood of the people changed. Everyone again began to shout and sing odes to the great ruler. The princess quietly replied that she was fine, and the knight was ordered to get out of the carriage. Blue-eyed tried to explain that the man was in pain because he was wounded, but she was interrupted so that her hopes would not rise. They were going to the death penalty. Nothing could be changed. The state does not spare those who killed their people during the war. One of the guards brought the girl medicine. He handed it over, but clicked his tongue because it was not intended for a slave. An image of someone with a wound on his head popped into his head. The lady looked around and jumped out of the cart to take him some medicine. But no such luck. Kazan stood in the way. "Where are you going?" The beauty doesn't know where to go. The gentleman's intense gaze seems to burn right through her. This makes her completely. He is dissatisfied and expresses it directly. Have you hit yourself so hard that you've become completely stupid? Even if the man returned, his life would not become easier. Nothing would help. Listening to this, the lady gradually began to lose any hope of understanding. Explanations are the last hope. Her people are dying right in front of the girl. She wants to do at least something, but as a result, she is limited even in this, which in fact greatly confuses her, making her feel an emotional loss. The young man comments on how stupid. The virgin can't even take care of herself, let alone anyone else. Like the one who used to rule the kingdom that was defeated. She can't do anything. She can only calm down. What happened before was already a kind of execution. The people will still be sentenced to death, no matter what. If Ilona appears in the place where the action will take place, they will think that their fault will be in her death. The beauty should be as careful and reasonable as possible. The blonde turns away, her hands tightly clutching the bottle of medicine. She asks if the young man will feel better from this. He wants her death more than anyone, so he will not lose anything from this, only gain. With the sharpness of his movements, the hero snatches the ointment from her hands. Don't talk nonsense. The young man's revenge is not to achieve the death of a complete slave. He has a much more ideal plan in mind. Fingers gently touch the forehead. The man smears the medicine on the wound, trying to be as careful as possible. He wants the lady to suffer with him, right until the end of her days. When it was all over, the king was about to leave. Before leaving the square, he noted that the executions would soon be repeated. But this time, the beauty would have a choice. No one would stop her. The blue-eyed girl bashfully lowers her eyes to the floor. Too many thoughts are mixing in her head. They are all pressing, interfering. She is still thinking about the option of saving her subjects. The voice dropped. The hero directly warns the girl, "If you still show up there, then I will have no choice but to kill you." The heroine should be more careful and remember the instructions. Some time passed. The celebration began. Those gathered in the main hall raised their glasses, filled to the brim with alcohol. They all thanked the ruler for the victory. The slave is next to the throne of His Majesty. Perhaps she is the only one left with a gloomy face. Everyone around is rejoicing at the destruction of another state. As a princess, she can do nothing. For the people, there is only a girl in front of them, who will receive punishment, both in Ashtra and in her homeland. She will have to live out her days in complete solitude, being a nobody. The king calls the slave. She immediately comes up to pour some wine. The brunette warns that what will happen next will probably be difficult for such a fragile person to bear. You should never fall down right in the hall. Whether it is a misunderstanding or a mistake, it is worth remembering that if someone dies, they cannot be brought back to life by any existing means. Blue-Eyed wants to ask a question, but it seems that everything is at the wrong time. At that very second, the arrival of the Padishah's house is announced. Clapping is immediately heard from the subjects, and the master himself asks them to come in. They probably have news. The heroine has too many thoughts spinning in her head. It seems that just now, Kazan allowed her to speak out. It was more like something from a fantasy series, because before he not only remained cold, but was also cruel. A sad smile freezes on her lips, reflecting all the bitterness, no matter what. Parshan is not going to give up just like that. Her battle is not over yet, although she does not understand what comes next. The first to bow is a bald man who introduces himself as Chancellor Harnuk Padishah, and then he greets His Majesty, trying to show due respect to his superior, without doing anything wrong. A dark-haired girl comes forward and introduces herself as Irid Padishah. She is the royal advisor. She, just like her father, greets the Lord, a smile on her face, because on this day, they also celebrate victory with the whole country. The Chancellor, like everyone else, is incredibly happy that Parshan no longer exists. The death of an enemy state is a great goal finally achieved. They have been trying for years to achieve a decent result. Luck smiled. The brunette puts his hand forward. It's too early to celebrate. The man raises his eyebrows in displeasure. It seems only the gentleman remains skeptical. There is another suggestion. You should take the queen now that the country has stabilized. War can serve as an excuse, but 4 whole years without an heir is perhaps too much, even for such an advanced state, where one constantly needs to have free time to solve problems, and not for family. Listening to all this, Ilona, for some reason, shrinks. But the Chancellor continues. A woman who has known you for a long time would be ideal for this role. There is some truth in this. She served with dignity, and will serve even more faithfully. The man points to his daughter. He calmly explains that she would be the best fit. She helped the master from the very beginning of the war. The brunette looks from under her eyelashes. I am always ready to serve the royal house. Blue-Eyed doesn't feel entirely comfortable. What's happening really bothers her. The approach is straightforward. It's very different from how things are done in Parshan. The woman understands in advance that Kazan cannot like something like this. But Irid presses until victory. If you allow me to be closer to you, I will be able to serve many times more diligently, perform all tasks much faster and better. The red-eyed man chuckles. An interesting proposal. If the lady wants to be closer to him, he will give her such an opportunity. The beauty thinks that she will receive a marriage proposal and immediately smiles, as she expected. You understand me. The situation got complicated. The gentleman started talking about what he could do. The girl would be given housing right in the castle. It would be more convenient for her to perform her duties. Thus, the efficiency would really increase many times over. The teeth clench on their own. The lady really expected something else. She nods. She is not going to give up just like that. Some kind of remark will still be made to Cinder. The assistant points with her hand at the blonde standing with a wine jug. Let me tell you, aren't you being too merciful to her? Parsianka understands that it has come to her. This will not end well. The advisor knows what the people want. She menacingly reminds that the people demand her execution, which means it would be best to follow them. Many say that for some reason, even the date has not yet been set. This makes them angry. The brunette is pressing. It would be nice to carry out the execution during the victory feast, which has been going on for several hours now. The blood of a sinner will only decorate the holiday. Unable to bear it, the young man stood up and looked menacingly. This woman is no longer a princess, but my slave. Harnuk intervenes. The ruler of a defeated country and his entire family are traditionally obliged to be killed. He is not allowed to finish. Kazan knows what to answer. According to tradition, he, the usurper of the throne, must be executed first. The bald man tries to justify himself, while the ruler continues. For political purposes, it is much more profitable to keep the lady alive. He has his own plan. So the topic of ending the princess's life will no longer have to be discussed. In order not to continue the conversation, the gentleman rises from the throne, in which case the official part of the celebration can begin. The family has no right to object. They can only step aside and sit down in their places in the hall. Raising his glass of drink upwards, the young man begins his official speech, which he is obliged to deliver as the ruler of the country. He declares the week of celebration of the great victory open. May your efforts be fully rewarded. The most important thing, something that cannot be forgotten, is to honor the gods who granted victory from above. Without them, nothing would have happened. All this time, the blue-eyed one remains sad. She stands aside. The rest of the room raise their glasses. A buzz is heard from all sides. Everyone demands that a sacrifice be made to the gods. The ruler approaches to take a sharply sharpened blade the size of his forearm. Antonio was dragged into the hall. He looked as bad as he once did, wounds everywhere, clothes torn. He was thrown on the floor. The brunette goes down the stairs. He looks straight into the eyes. We are selling the ritual of choosing Sindar. The man wished Parsonets to be blessed by the gods, after which he cut his hand. Blood flowed in streams directly onto the prince's face. The sentence began. The young man screams in fear, but his sister does not understand what happened. The former ruler of the state seemed to have seen something incredibly terrible. Fortunately, the princess was never able to ask him what was behind Sindar. She could only watch from the side. The man moans. He would like to ask to be spared, but his mouth is also closed. A sinful soul has no right to forgiveness, wishing him death. Kazan touched his head with his hand. In a second, the body seemed to crumble into dust, even the bones. There were only shackles left at the master's feet. The brunette raised his blade. I, Sindar, just sent his rowing soul straight to hell. The ritual ended quickly enough. The room buzzes again. Revenge has been taken. It's time for another toast. This time even more special. What's really important? The master steps back to his throne. The beauty gasped and covered her mouth with her hands. A lot of dubious thoughts immediately arose in her head. Her brother turned into sand in an instant. He couldn't even object. The lady does not understand, since when Kazan has such an ability, the lady cannot ask because she is a slave. The man passes by her without even paying any attention. Harnuk begins to speak. This is truly an incredible power. He is going to tell one story. When he first saw the gentleman, he immediately realized that this was an unusual person. He realized that abilities were hidden in him. Those sitting next to the old man began to remember the past with him. The conversation turns to those days when the hero worked as a mercenary. Some did not yet know the truth. They are interested in what the story is. What happened about 7 years ago. Then there was the height of the civil war in the territory of Ashatra. Everyone was saving themselves as best they could. Some ran away. Some still died on the battlefield because they could not escape. The mercenary team was recruiting new members, and that's when Sindar came to them. But he remained secretive, so he decided to hide his true identity from the rest of the squad. Some did not suspect anything strange, but the Chancellor's family was not so simple. Because of the unusually brave appearance of the young man, the master immediately realized that he was the youngest prince. Kazan was determined to become king, but Harnuk was still hesitant. He didn't know how he was going to make it happen. Given the civil war, the situation was only getting worse. Irid always had a sharper eye. She almost always understood how to set priorities correctly and how to understand what is in a person's soul. The girl realized the potential of Sindar and asked her father to help him. After some time of preparation, the duel with the first prince took place. Everyone in the kingdom knew that the very day had come when the curse was challenged. On that day, absolutely everything changed. The people in the room were smiling, because many remembered how everything had changed. One of those sitting at the table next to Harnuk will not be able to forget the emotions she experienced that day. No one expected that the seventh prince could escape death so masterfully. He was invincible, and knew that he had nothing more to fear. God was on his side, protecting him. The blue-eyed girl stood silently next to the gentleman. She listened to what those gathered in the hall were telling, and finally showed her emotions. The story seemed surreal to her. She asked herself, is this even possible? Carefully turning his gaze, the man turned to the slave. He wanted to know if she hated him because she had just found out. Clenching her hands, she exclaimed, "Who are you anyway?" The hero did not want to continue the conversation. He considered it pointless. Turning away, the young man turned to Iris, who at that time was surrounded by other girls. They were talking about something. The order sounded loudly. Everyone around froze in sincere surprise. "Take this slave to the agate palace." The woman grimaced. She had to ask again to make sure that she had not misheard. The brunette says skeptically, "That castle was built for none other than the queen." The young man remains unperturbed. "Now it is empty and is the closest to my bedroom, isn't it?" Attempts to object and remind that there are separate rooms for slaves were stopped. The hero does not sleep with any woman in the same bedroom, and he does not want to walk a long way almost every night. According to etiquette, the girl has no right to remain in the chambers of the one who will be the future mistress. The ruler does not care about etiquette as long as he remains the head. Everyone else has no choice. They will have to continue to obey. Bowing her head, the girl promises to obey. As the manager of the palace, she will settle the slave in the agate palace and will keep a close eye on her. Evening came. The two walked away from the hall. At first they walked in silence, until the beauty asked to ask one question. It had been spinning in her head for more than an hour, and there was no one else to ask. At the celebration, they told of the day when the curse was defied, and the lady wanted to know what it really meant. Iris snorted. She didn't enjoy communicating with the slave, but she agreed. "Well, you should learn more about the master you serve." The blonde was ready to listen, but then, completely unexpectedly, she received a slap in the face, so hard that she almost fell. A light scream echoed throughout the entire corridor. The Padishah smirks. "People like you must be able to receive blows." She is sure that in this way, one can teach a person submission, so that he does not resist unnecessarily. The brunette grabs the former princess by the chin and examines her face. "Your skin is so white that you can't find any signs of life. It's even a little scary, I must admit." Irid can't help but notice that the girl looks pathetic. She wonders how such a girl, how she can please Mr. Sindar, because she is completely not to his taste. If only the slave belonged to the mistress, she would have chosen a different path of upbringing. The woman did not have time to finish her thought. A familiar voice was heard behind her. "Would you kill her?" The beauty's eyes instantly reflect fear. She exclaims that she would never even dare to think about such a thing. She bows her head, crossing her arms over her chest. Sindar ignores the assistant, walking forward straight to the princess. He is not sure of her words, because the meaning was only what he thought. Hatred was heard in her voice. The man does not touch the girl's face, but he does not need to. His eyes carefully examine the scarlet mark left by the palm. A wave of anger flares up inside at the one who did this. The voice lowers. "Iris, you know that incompetence is a sin in Ashatra. You should know this." The beauty does not immediately understand what the young man is leading to. She answers that she knows, trying to catch this thin thread. The man continues, wondering what punishment he should give to the one in charge of the palace for having spoiled his slave, which belongs to the master, and no one can touch it. The realization came quickly enough. The manager quickly bows her head. She sincerely asks for forgiveness, hoping that somehow she will be able to avoid punishment from the ruler. The hand falls heavily on the lady's shoulder. "It would be good if you remembered something. It is worth properly managing what belongs to the emperor. The master plans to do the taming himself." The brunette clenches her teeth and has no choice but to promise that she will be much more careful in the future. The two went to the castle. Iris pushed the slave into the spacious bathroom. "No one wants to help you, so wash yourself." She didn't say another word. Inside, it was as if a stone lay on her soul. The lady was glad only that she was finally alone. Going down, she stuck her feet in the water, on the surface of the water. From the reflection, sad eyes were looking at her. All the moments that he had to go through and everything that he had to hear during the whole day are running through his head, and until the very end, he could not believe that Kazan had received a blessing from God himself. The man's gaze, that same cold one, remains one of the most painful of all this time. The lady could not stop feeling as if the truth had offended her lover, and to such an extent. A crazy thought came into my head. Most likely, Cinder had not yet revealed his soul to me from the very beginning. From the realization of the situation, it becomes even more offensive, which causes tears, which by themselves begin to flow down my cheeks. Behind him, the sound of a door slamming was clearly heard, and then steps. It was impossible to listen to that. Kazan approached the beauty, who almost immediately climbed out of the water and tried to wipe her tear-stained face. The blonde understands that she will not be consoled. The gentleman has probably come to spend the night again. I turn away a little. The lady asks, "You can just leave. I no longer have the confidence to see you today." The eyes narrow, which shows a new wave of discontent in Cinder's soul. The lady wanted to sort out the misunderstandings. Apparently this was all nothing more than a lie. "Nothing new," the lady exclaims. "This is not so." His hands are shaking slightly, and now new doubts are forming in his head. It seems as if the young man never loved the princess. Their relationship seems to be built on lies, and the situation is getting worse. The master never told anyone that he was immortal, and that he was the seventh prince of his country. He either deliberately hid the truth, or did not believe that everything would go smoothly and he would get the throne. Everything could have turned out differently if the hero had told. Even though Ilona remained a weak princess, they could have taken a slightly different path. Their life together would have turned out differently. The brunette clenches his teeth in anger. "Another way means," he repeats, "if you knew that I was a prince, then nothing would have changed." He knows that he would not have been saved from prison. There was no talk of running away together. Elena should have done all this regardless of whether her lover was Cinder or not. He blames the woman for inaction, since their relationship was on a different level, because at that time the young man was just a slave. It was not worth giving her life. The girl most likely decided to herself that it would be easier for her. A woman listens to how a man really thinks. She wanted to return again, but it seems that no one wants to listen to her. There is a fire in her eyes. "I gave you another chance. It was you who missed it." The blonde asks again. She didn't even know that she would be given another chance. Instead of an answer, there was rudeness. The young man came closer and pushed the heroine's body back. She fell back into the bathroom. Earlier, Ilona asked what happened to Kazan over the past 7 years. He never told her the truth. Almost all the time he had to wander through the bloody battlefield. The young man remembers everything in detail. Terrible things, as a rule, are not forgotten just like that. He was in a repeating circle of flesh and blood, and with his own hands cut the prince's throat. The hero had to sacrifice a lot just to get to where he is. The brunette asks the girl, "Do you know what was much more difficult than all these things?" "Of course you." The man gradually leaned towards the girl's face, and finally, finding himself next to her face, he looked straight into her eyes. It was time to pay what he deserved. He kisses Ilona, expressing all his feelings. Blue-eyed feels a hand that gradually descends to her thigh. Trying to push off, she asks to stop. "I'm not ready yet." Her face turns redder and redder, showing that in fact, she wants the action not to end. Of course, the wishes were not heard. The man almost immediately turned her body with her back to him, clasping her throat with his hand. He only quietly whispers, ordering her to spread her legs properly. "You are just a slave who obeys." The brunette touches his lips to her neck, and then to her collarbone. He starts talking about himself. Despite the fact that he was betrayed, there was not a day that he did not miss. He wanted to be next to his beloved. The woman can't utter a word, but really wants to refuse. She is squeezed too hard, so much so that she will soon lose consciousness. Earlier she asked if Kazan loves her. His answer is yes. Feelings cannot be erased so easily. The hero remembers them very well. How much he loved the lady then. He hates her just as much years later. He has changed quite a lot. For some reason, Ilona remembers an incident that happened about 12 years ago. When she was still living relatively peacefully in the kingdom, her brother took the girl with him. They came to some hall where other people were already settled. Antonio is urging his sister on. "We'll be late because of you. Hurry up." The blue-eyed girl has no choice but to apologize for her sluggishness. The blonde was always dissatisfied with something, and regardless of what the beauty did, if he was ordered to go out together again, he would not take Ilona with him. Finally, the two made their way into the main hall to their seats. The beauty sat down, and could not help but notice how literally a meter away from her, a slave with a chain around her neck was feeding her master. Her gaze was empty, and she herself was exhausted. The blue-eyed girl felt uneasy. She shrank and turned to her brother. What kind of place was this? She sincerely did not understand. The green-eyed one grinned. He was ready to give an answer, but the head of the auction interrupted him. The man thanked everyone present for taking the time to attend. He announced that special, interesting items had been prepared for the auction, which could be looked at and even purchased. The gentleman points with his hand to one of those who is bringing lot number 1 onto the stage, a girl from the village of the state of Ashatra. She is shaking all over. Obviously, she is scared. The beauty is 17 years old. She is still pure and very young. The princess shrank even more. She felt sorry for the people who were going to be sold. Finally, her brother deigned to answer the question posed earlier. This is a slave auction. The highest quality slaves are collected here. He assures that there is no better place to find. The girl carefully addressed the young man. She did not want to provoke his aggression. Brother, your father told you. She reminds that the king asked to stop buying slaves. Their number in the castle exceeded the norm. While waving it off, the hero still got angry. The girl herself wanted to leave the palace and asked to go with him. Since she decided, then now she must remain silent. And if she does not remain silent, they threatened to leave her at the auction. The beauty quietly asked for forgiveness and turned away. The bets began. Ever larger sums could be heard in the hall. One of the slaves was sold for 500,000 gold. The blue-eyed one felt like she was starting to feel sick. It feels like the girl is left completely alone in this deserted place. The people on stage are exactly the same as the aristocrats, just without status. The blonde only dreams of how to quickly leave the nasty hall. Time flies. One after another, the slaves are sold. There really is a demand for them. The head of the auction shouts that it is time to present the last item. Everyone has been waiting for it for a long time. He tears the scarlet cloth from the cage. In the cage sits a boy with dark hair. He is healthy, but has eyes as red as blood. They announce that the best quality boy came straight from Ashatra, from the capital of the country, so this makes him more valuable. The beauty looks at the young man carefully. Before, this other product did not attract her so much. Something in her chest turned over. The hero responded with the same look. Scarlet eyes sparkle. There is nothing left to do but turn away. The woman would like to ask not to judge her, because she is not like the others. She just followed her brother. But, alas, she has no right to tell anything. Antonio interrupts his sister's thoughts. He asks if the heroine likes that guy. The little thing, I see, has completely let herself go. The heroine began to object, but he himself had already decided that he would buy the stranger from Ashatra. The conversation didn't have time to end. Something happened. A loud explosion, darkness, and then screams and a fire that started unexpectedly. People ask for help. His Majesty is informed that the entrance is blocked. There is no way to leave. One of the knights points his finger to the side. The prince should escape through the back door, otherwise he will die under the rubble. Antonio immediately pushes his sister away and heads for the exit. The princess shouts that she will go with him. She was about to go up the stairs when she remembered the one everyone left behind. The cage in which the young man was sitting was never opened. It remained standing on the stage. The beauty understands that she cannot allow the young man to be left completely alone. He does not deserve it. Light steps. Ilona rushes forward, trying to get around the stones shaved onto the floor. The fire grows with cosmic speed. The blonde first has to pick up the keys, which are lying somewhere to the side. Finally, the mission is accomplished, covering her face with her hands so that nothing gets into her eyes. The beauty throws the bunch into the cage, ordering to hurry. For a second, the red-eyed man freezes. He doesn't quite understand why they suddenly decided to save him, but he doesn't ask the question directly. The heroine stands and looks around to make sure nothing gets under her feet, but she completely forgets to look up. One of the beams breaks off and quickly flies straight at her head. The girl looked at her clothes. They were completely dirty. She didn't notice how the beam broke from above, but then she heard a sound, looking up. She froze in horror, unable to even jump back. It seemed that everything would end. The woman closed her eyes, but for some reason she did not feel pain. Opening her eyes, she groaned. because that same slave protected her. He exposed his back, because of which his body was covered in blood. The blonde asks quietly, not understanding if she was really saved. She can't help but notice that he is also badly injured and needs help. The brunette said that he knows everything, and then, with a sharp movement, decided to get up. The arm suffered the most. The beauty also rose and gently touched it with her palm and said, "You need to get out quickly and get help. Leaving an open wound like that really wasn't worth it." Red Eyes doesn't answer. He looks around to see what to do next, and then suddenly picks up the princess in his arms. "Just hold on tight," he says. His eyes filled with a confidence that wasn't noticeable before. Sitting in her room, Ilona sighs sadly. For the first time in a long time, she dreamed about that day at the auction again. More than 10 years have passed. On that day, Kazan was carrying. And of course, the girl will never forget it. The way a man behaves with a slave pops into my head. He constantly forces her to do things she doesn't want. She doesn't remember how she fell asleep. In a Kshatriya, nothing goes the way she wants. Everything goes wrong. A sad look focused on the window. The woman would like to know what she can do at all to change at least something. Thoughts are in constant chaos. Because of this, it is much more difficult. The blonde gets out of bed and heads to the balcony. Sitting in one place will definitely not lead her to a cleared mind. An endless desert opens up ahead. It must be admitted. The area is truly beautiful. Of course, it's good to watch from afar. The maiden wouldn't want to be in the desert. Suddenly she felt pain. Something was thrown at her. The heroine lowers her head to understand who got into the territory. An unfamiliar voice is heard. A man says that if you approach an open area, it becomes dangerous. A tall man with white hair emerges from the vines. "My name is Aslan." The green-eyed man doesn't need to ask who is on the balcony. He already understands that in front of him is Ilona, His Majesty's slave. All the people in Ashtra are well aware of her identity. The man asks for forgiveness if he suddenly seemed rude. He came to the castle only to check something. With these words, he humbly bows his head. A calm look inspires confidence. "I really wanted to see you," the young man continues. The heroine still has many questions. She reaches forward and touches the broken railing with her hand. A slight scream was heard. The man asks if the lady is hurt. There is slight concern in his voice. A doctor should be called immediately. Scarlet traces of blood appeared on the hand, which is gradually coming out of the wound. Grasping her palm, the beauty assures that she just needs to stop the bleeding, and then everything will be fine. There is no person who would like to treat a slave, which means there is no point in calling a doctor either. The young man smiles. "Then I will cure you," he offers calmly, and explains that in the corner of the corridor, there is a place where you can hide from people. If the lady comes there, she will be given first aid. The girl had no choice but to agree. She went down almost immediately, and very soon a new acquaintance appeared in the distance. He made his way through the bushes, trying to remain unnoticed. The princess greets the man. He nods, and then squats down, holding a bag in his hands, which he unfolds. "I have a lot of different herbs because I go to the temple." Almost immediately, the beauty assumes that in front of her is a priest. The green-eyed man is smiling, and so it is. The heroine guessed. By his attire, this could have been noticed even earlier. Sitting down next to her, the girl holds out her palm. It is completely wrapped up. Because in the room she took the remaining tissues, it was a little awkward to receive treatment, and therefore tried to stop the bleeding. The young man's expression changed. He was surprised. But he didn't want to upset the lady. "You did well." The bandage didn't allow the fingers to move, so the priest was going to do it all over again. With light movements, the blonde made a new bandage. This time it turned out neat. The blue-eyed one thanks. Aslan nods, noting that it would have been better if he had done it with even better medicines. It's been hard to help others lately, all because there is a shortage of temples in the country. The princess is surprised. She asked if it's true that there could be a shortage of temples, because it seems unrealistic. A sigh and a lament explains the situation. Maybe other temples have different things, but in the temple where the hero serves, there is such a thing. Lord Sindar is not happy with those who are there. The blue-eyed girl noticeably became sad. She lowered her gaze to the floor. "Obviously, you are in the same position as me." The interlocutor is silent. He is thinking about what to answer to something like this. A hand falls on Ilona's shoulder in an attempt to cheer her up a little. Perhaps the lady will have a hard time due to the nearest safety rules. This is understandable, because in Parshan everything is very different. Aslan asks for only one thing. The girl should never give up. She has the strength to overcome any danger and endure any difficulties that life will present her with more than once. The blue-eyed girl looks at him with a hint of gratitude. She says that she is pleased. This is really the first person who tried to cheer her up, considering the difficult situation. The conversation ended. It was time for the monk to return before the situation worsened. His Majesty would be angry if he saw that he was next to a slave. They already had a difficult relationship. The blonde asks in surprise, "Are you leaving already?" "Why?" She would like to stop her new acquaintance, but in any case, a decision of this level is beyond her control. The green-eyed man smiles radiantly. They will definitely see each other again, because nothing is unreal. The princess wondered how soon this would happen. After that, it was time to go back to the castle. The beauty, as usual, stands next to the throne on which the master sits. Her scarlet gaze focused on the hand on which the bandage is located. The man squinted, because he does not understand what happened. The prince wanted to ask to understand where the lady got the wound, but then he was distracted. Harnack reports that the third prince of the kingdom of Ader has finally arrived. He walks forward along the red carpet and bows his head. The man congratulates the great Lord Sindar on his well-deserved victory in the war with Parshan. The kingdom brings tribute and servants. I ask you to accept them with pleasure. We will be happy to convey the gifts. The Padishah, with a fire of anticipation in his eyes, asks where is what they will get. The master puts everything in its place. They do not need slaves, because if you think about how his people suffered when they were servants, this is a crime. The chancellor jumps up in displeasure. Sindar, such subordination has been there since early times. There is nothing strange about it. Kazan's voice lowered. He begins to get angry at what is happening. It was high time to stop the wrong subordination. If we continue to be greedy like Parshan, then the people will bear the sin, just like them. Everyone remembered what happened to Antonio. The gentleman turns to the prince again. Many people once lost their children to slavery, so it is logical that his decision would be accepted. The guest bows. This is truly a wise decision. The woman involuntarily begins to think about what kind of life Kazan had. She knows only part of how he used to spend his time, but the last 7 years have completely disappeared. One can only judge by the decisions the young man makes. The heroine cannot help but notice that, unlike her brother, the one who brought Parshan to the point of no return, Sindar became a fairly good emperor. Unfortunately, the young man remained cruel to the slave. She is always sad that such an attitude is only towards her, but she is not able to change anything. She had to be distracted from her thoughts. A whisper arose in the hall because the door swung open and someone walked inside. This person turned out to be familiar even to Parshanka. The priest from the Lu temple goes ahead. He smiles, even though he understands that no one is happy to see him. He was refused admission, but he went against the order because he had urgent business. The blonde starts by saying that he had a dream last night. The red-eyed man immediately bares his teeth in anger. I told you, I'm not interested in your dreams. It seems that the young man doesn't care about the master's objections. His Majesty must be interested in his future, in any case, especially when it is connected with Ilona. The girl freezes. She expected to hear anything, of course, except this. The young man straightened his back. He was not going to leave, but without telling the whole truth, he looked straight into the princess's eyes and smiled lightly. The atmosphere remained tense. The beauty stealthily glances at the ruler. She has no right to ask directly, but expects that she will still be able to find out the news that interests her. Silence hangs in the hall before the conversations rise again. No one understands whether something will happen to the master. Not even a year has passed since he was crowned. The red-eyed one exhales with displeasure. True, undisguised anger rolls into his pupils. The blonde bows his head. He turns again. But of course, not just like that. If you are interested in learning about your future, I ask you to come to my domain yourself. He will be waiting in the Temple of Lu. It's time to leave the palace. Aslan looks at Ilona one last time and notices that she should be treated better. He hopes that from now on, Kazan will take care of the one who is always by his side. The girl expected everything, but not this. She blinked her eyes in surprise and was waiting for her lover to answer. The tension in the room increased. Kazan should be more careful with those who are close to him. These people will not always be at hand. Clenching his teeth, the gentleman swallows his anger, waiting until the last moment for Aslan to leave. After everything was over, Sindar jumped up from the throne. He drags the girl with him into another room. With a strong grip, he grabs her wrist, asking about the hand. Aslan cured you, didn't he? The answer is not heard. But from the young man's side, it is a rhetorical question. He has put the puzzle together in his head a long time ago. He clenches his teeth and then says, "If you met someone, you must immediately tell me about it. It cannot be any other way." He abruptly lets go of the lady. The hero turns away and orders to call a doctor. And as quickly as possible, he doesn't really want to continue a meaningless conversation with someone who doesn't listen to him. The brunette advises the heroine to take good care of her wound until it completely heals. You can't let the infection get inside the cut, otherwise it will only get worse. The beauty remains silent. From now on, if something happens, Ilona is obliged to inform Sindar directly. He angrily remarks, "Never get involved with Aslan again." The blue-eyed one does not understand. The man saw their future. The man clicks his tongue, waving it off. He and the monk have their own history that has brought them to this point. The young man is just a liar with a long tongue, easily gains trust, and then betrays. Not everyone knows the future. Or rather, only God himself knows it for sure. But even knowing the future, it cannot be changed in any way. The beauty sadly lowers her eyes to the floor. I still want to know. There is nothing wrong with that. The girl wants to know even the little things, even if they are not important to Kazan. But no matter how it is connected with them, it can improve the situation between them. The brunette looks at him arrogantly. He immediately asks, wondering what the beauty will do as soon as she finds out more. She will probably betray him again, as she did last time, 7 years ago. The beauty reaches her hand to the young man's chest. She gently stops it and quietly says, "I'm just worried about you." It's not clear why after so much time, the young man doesn't even try to believe. The blue-eyed girl remembers the times when they were still together, when they once loved each other very much. Sadness can be seen in her eyes. The desire to return to the past does not go away. The voice breaks. Sindar believed his beloved until the very end. He believed that those words that were spoken in prison exactly 7 years ago were a lie. He hoped that they would return for him, but he was betrayed, abandoned to his death. The beauty should have come to her senses a long time ago. She did nothing and cannot hope that she will be forgiven, and moreover, that they will begin to trust her again. It sounds funny. Even in the worst moments, Kazan harbored hopes for the best. 7 years ago, when he was in prison, a friend came to visit him. She came in a hood and crept in quietly so that no one would notice. The first thing the blonde asks is if the young man is okay. The hero shakes himself off and gets up from the cold, moldy floor, assuring that it doesn't matter. Everything will pass. "I was only waiting for you." Surprise can be read in her eyes. The girl didn't say that she would come to visit her friend, which means it's strange that he found out about everything. It turns out that he thought that the lady would come at least to say goodbye. Samira grins. "That's right, that's exactly why I came." She even had to knock out the guard at the entrance just to get inside. She had no other choice. They didn't discuss too much. The woman reminds that, despite the opportunity, they don't have much time. They should only talk about business. The young man immediately tells the truth. Ilona came. She said that she never loved me. The voice immediately took on a questioning tone. The slave does not believe that the princess did this only to save herself from death. The red-eyed one interrupts her. I know that Ilona is not like that. Be that as it may, even a stupid person needs to understand that Antonio is most likely blackmailing her. This is not surprising. Kazan asks to convey his words to the lady, but Samira looks at this skeptically. Kazan is imprisoned, not Ilona. You should worry about yourself. The slave is outraged. Sindar's execution will take place soon, and this is much more terrible than misunderstandings with someone about whom you are not even sure. The brunette smiles weakly. Don't worry about me. He explains that he has a plan. They will meet outside at night. The young man is sure that he will be able to escape, only for the sake of Parshan. They must be together at all costs. All the hero asks from his friend is to convey information to the lady and tell her that the meeting will take place in the place where they always saw each other before. If they manage to meet, then all three of them will go to a Shatra. The confidence in the words made the heroine smile, although she herself was not sure of such a plan. Exhaling, the beauty nods. Okay, that's what we'll do. The brunette sincerely thanks Samira, but she only nods. She is ready to do anything for the most noble person. Before arriving in a Shatra, she promises to do everything possible to show devotion. The man thanks again. While the slave explains what is happening in the castle, the princess is under surveillance. Information about the meeting will be transmitted secretly so that no one can intercept the data. It is important to be careful, though, as the slave knows more. He tells you that you can use the shortcut that connects to Elon's room. It is not as dangerous as trying to get through a window or door. Samira promises that everything will be fine and asks the gentleman to be careful. He asks the same from his friend. Very soon, the plan will come into effect, and then everything will change 360 degrees. The knight who had been watching the exit before goes down to the prison cell. He grins nastily before asking the man a question. Are you the one who got involved with the princess of this kingdom? The brunette said that he was jealous. The girl had a beautiful body, but he was wondering if there was something special about her. He couldn't finish the conversation. The slave suddenly stretched his hands through the bars and pressed the observer to the bars, holding him right by the throat. As soon as the hero finds it more difficult to breathe, they let him go. Because he is already falling unconscious. Footsteps are heard. Samira came down the stairs. An expression of horror is frozen on her face. This makes Sindar ask questions. There is a scroll of paper in her hands. She runs closer to the bars and asks to look at what was handed to her. The red-eyed man quickly looks through the text. With each line, something inside freezes. Even more questions appeared. The princess betrayed her lover. She could think of nothing better than to accuse the slave before the king. Declaring that she had been abused, she demanded execution as the ideal punishment. Of course, the hero asks where Samira found the document. The blonde explained that Lord Xerox gave it to her. He expressed his desire to help the future king of Ashatra escape. Thoughts were mixed up in his head, after all. All this was confusing. The man was like a father to Kazan, which meant he couldn't lie. But the hero trusted Ilona more. The document could easily have been forged. Antonio is always against his sister. A conspiracy against her would not be a problem for him. Yet the young man does not understand why he should slander the princess at a time when it seems as if no benefit can be derived from it. Samira promised to tell Ilona that they needed to meet at the place in the field where they usually spent time. The young man asks if the girl fulfilled the request. The answer is simple. Of course, yes. The case is not so bad. All that remains is to stick to the plan and follow all the rules. If the lady sent a fake document, it means that she is in danger and she needs help. Taking out the keys that were stolen from the guard, the young man heads out of the cell. They will wait for the princess until midnight, and if she does not come, they will have to go looking for her. The main thing is that everything goes well. Samira doesn't know much about Parshan, so she doubts it until the end. She asks what will happen if the document is true. After all, the lady was previously going to marry another, although she promised to run away with Sindar. Any doubts the girl had were nipped in the bud. The plan remained in effect. Ilona could not be allowed to wait too long. She might think that her lover had changed his mind if he was suddenly late. The young man believed the lady to the end. He went to the meeting place, but instead of the girl, he received his sentence, because before he could come to his senses, he received a blade from Antonio, who came as if from nowhere. The brunette tells the heroine how he felt when everything happened. The one who was waiting for him was in a conspiracy with the prince. She thought that everything would end quickly, but did not know about the abilities of her lover. When the morning came, the master came back to life. Samira, lying on the ground, was abandoned without any care. No one needed her, just a slave who tried to protect her only friend. Kazan remembered standing over the lifeless body, not understanding what to do next. He asks if the beauty understands what he felt when he dug the grave with his own hands. The one who tried until the end for the love of the couple died in the end because she did not expect it, all because the man believed Ilona. He believed her until the very end, hoping that since their feelings were mutual, everything would be fine from now on. Blue-eyed tries to justify herself. I didn't know it would happen like this, honestly. She says that when she was in the castle, her brother suddenly took her away, without explaining anything, and she went with him, because no one gave her a choice. Rushing forward, the young man grabs the girl by the wrist and pulls her closer. Because of the betrayal, 2 people died. There is no point in lying further, because in any case, they cannot be brought back alive. A stingy tear rolls down her cheek. The blonde repeats again that it is not a lie. Samira handed over some papers, but the guards took them away almost immediately, not even allowing her to read the information. At the trial, the woman never wanted to be executed. On the contrary, she wanted to do everything just to save her lover. She made a pact with her brother so that he would not touch Kazan. The girl proved her love in a simple way, although in reality it cost a lot. Tears are pouring down her cheeks. It is becoming more and more difficult to explain. A lump in her throat does not allow her to speak calmly. Red Eyes chuckles, his voice filled with disbelief. So Lord Xerox forged the documents. What are you trying to say? The princess has no idea what happened then, but she knows one thing. Antonio said that he would take the beauty to the Eastern Tower, and then simply killed Kazan right before her eyes, doing it cruelly. The girl clasps the man's hand with her hands. She sincerely hopes that he will believe her, but his facial expression does not show that his feelings have changed. I just wanted to save you. Unfortunately, Ilona did nothing but waste her life. The days went by and became monotonous. They stretched into years, and thus 7 whole years passed. Lowering her head and trying not to sob, the beauty repeats once again that all this is true, as if she wants to remember it as a mantra that will save her and lead to understanding. The only sin the lady committed was sacrificing her life. It's all over. Clenching his fist, the man growls in displeasure. Do you think I'll believe in something like that? In a second, the young man turned the princess to face the wall, wrapping his arms around her waist. He doesn't want to listen to any more explanations. They are starting to irritate him. Blue-eyed tries to look at the young man and object. She exclaims. The conversation very quickly went in the wrong direction. Kazan acquired character traits that were manifested. A malicious look rests on the top of the beauty's head. Don't even think that I will believe your words. Unfortunately, the past cannot be changed. It remains as it was originally called. Back then, 7 years ago, they had already hurt each other too much, when they should have done everything differently. But now the lady will have to pay for her deception. She will not get a second chance at redemption. The girl can't run away. She's forbidden to even think about it. I like torturing you. The red-eyed man lowered himself closer to the neck and gently bit the soft skin. He would never let go of the one who was supposed to be next to him. A distinct scream is heard. Feelings overwhelm the body, filling it to the top. That night, Ilona could not see the expression on Kazan's face, because all the time he kept his distance, turning her to the wall. Perhaps the young man was still angry at her words from earlier, and her excuses, or he felt sad, because some part of his insides believed, until the very end, the woman he once loved. The night seemed especially long. The maiden could do nothing, because no one asked her what her true desires were. All that was left was to submit and silently accept everything that the master could offer. The girl was often left alone with the Padishah because she was appointed as the one who should watch over the slave. That morning, nothing was different. The beauty was sitting at the table, where there was food and drink in front of her. Blue-eyed began to worry a little, since the day they spent another night together. Kazan had not come for several days. Apparently, he still did not believe what they tried to explain to him. The woman could not understand what really happened that night. There was something written in the documents from Lord Xerox, but it was strange that something like that was written there. Strange that the princess was accused. At some point, the lady began to doubt. She began to think that the knight had betrayed Kazan, but she dismissed these thoughts in time. He was like a father to him. There was no point in suspecting an innocent person once again. A rough voice breaks me out of my thoughts and brings me back to reality. Irid notes that it is impolite to sit before a meal and not eat. The blonde turns away. I just can't eat this at all. The brunette snorts. How picky we are. The girl left. The princess had no choice but to exhale and try to forget about what happened. A rustling sound was heard, and then a stone flew onto the veranda. This makes her get up and go out. Almost immediately, it becomes clear whose doing this is. A blonde head can be seen in the bushes. Aslan smiles and asks to be quieter. Putting his finger to his lips, he calls to him. A smile freezes on Parshan's face. She almost immediately asks how the man got into the closed territory. He is definitely not welcome in the castle. The hero shrugs his shoulders. I just came on foot. A light laugh escapes from the chest. The monk is cheerful, and it is like a breath of fresh air. He is different from the others. A basket with fruits and some vegetables appears in his hands. The beauty gasps with pleasant surprise. The green-eyed one turned out to be quite smart. He thought that the local food would not be to her taste, so he brought something that she would like. It is not worth staying without food, otherwise there will be no vitality. The fruits, of course, were not collected from the places where the Parshionka had previously lived, but nevertheless, she should like them. Smiling easily, the slave sincerely thanks. She could not think that someone would do something like that. Still, doubts lurked inside. One had to ask why Aslan was so kind. Almost everyone in the castle hated the girl, even the one who dragged her to his chambers, leaving her in subordination. It was surprising that the monk was different. The man smiles easily. Earlier, in the main hall, he mentioned that he knows the future of the princess. She dreamed of him again, which means she plays a big role in the life of the kingdom of Ashatra. It is necessary to clarify so that the beauty does not get confused. The young man video, as the lady, together with Mr. Sindar, is in the country. Their future is not clear, but interesting enough for consideration. The slave thinks she has no right to ask for anything, but this does not stop her when she wonders if it is possible for her, too, to see the ruler's future. After all, she worries about him. After thinking for just a few seconds, the monk gave his verdict. Unfortunately, this is not possible. Then he encouraged Alona, however, I can tell a prophecy about you. If the heroine comes to the temple, that's where they'll tell her everything. The blonde asks if Kazan will allow her to go with the monk. He laughs. Of course he won't allow it. She'll have to sneak in secretly if it's really that important. Aslan knows very well when to choose the right moment. 3 days after the victory feast, Lord Sindar will spend the whole night in prayer. This is a chance that should not be missed at any cost. Before saying anything else, the young man asks in advance that at the appointed time they meet in the courtyard, so no one will notice them. I will take you to the temple. We will sort everything out on the spot. The priest falls silent. He turns to Iris, who is hiding behind the wall. I know you can hear everything. Somehow he managed to notice her. And all this at the very last moment, unexpectedly. Aslan calmly asks for a favor. He hopes that the lady will not tell anyone about what she heard. Otherwise, the plan will fail, not even having time to come into action. Padisha squints with displeasure. The brunette had never been known for her benevolence, and in this situation, she could not agree. I am responsible for this slave. The woman believes that all issues should be discussed with the ruler. She is interrupted. The order of the high priest is not discussed. Pressing on the sore spot, the young man asks if Padisha is afraid of angering God Lu. The expression changes even more, and the face becomes more twisted. The beauty bows her head. There is nothing left to do but obey. The man thanks the heroine for giving her consent. The blue-eyed one stands to the side, her own thoughts accumulated in her head. For some reason, doubts are still present. Even though Aslan is always kind to her, it is completely unclear whether he can be trusted, most likely not. The image of Kazan and the words he had said earlier froze in his head. The man believed that trusting the monk was more dangerous for himself because he only deceives with his lying tongue, makes you believe, and then betrays you. Despite her doubts, the beauty is not going to miss the perfect opportunity. The future can only be learned from Aslan. He is the last hope. In the hall, those gathered are drinking and eating. The banquet continues for exactly a week. As the master planned, one of the courtiers sitting next to Irid addresses her. She is going to tell interesting information. It turned out that the master had not been interested in the slave for about 5 days. He did not come to her chambers, and in public he did not pay any attention to her, as if she was not there. The Padishah smiles. It's hard not to call such news pleasant. Someone suggests that the young man is probably just tired of the princess, considering that there is such a wonderful person as Irid next to him. It is clear to everyone from the very beginning that the young man's interest could not linger for long. That is how it should be. This should have been expected. The brunette reasons from her own opinion. The woman pours herself some wine. She smirks. Everything is as it should be. The scent of a weak flower in the desert quickly dissipates. Ilona was not prepared for what awaits her. She only thought about death. People around are fawning. They raise their glasses in honor of the lady. In the place of the empress, only a strong flower should bloom. Then the kingdom will be in safe hands. The Padishah cannot help but be happy with the way things are. She turns her gaze to the throne. She is amused by the fact that the slave was really left without attention. Turning again to the people around her, the beauty tells how, as always, she looks with regret at the withering gardens of the palace. She will still become the mistress. Someone suggests deciding in advance what to plant. Iris is just thinking about what plants she will place there. The interlocutor groans, noticing that something is happening. The girl looks away and freezes. She is unable to squeeze out a word. The gentleman asked the princess to lower herself and hold the glass, and then began pouring wine into it. The blonde obediently waits until she can finally sip the drink. After the maiden began to drink, a whisper arose in the hall. Sindar at this time does not take his eyes off her, watching how the heroine gradually begins to get drunk. Those gathered in the hall cannot understand whether what they saw really happened in reality. No one had ever seen the young man share a meal with someone at the same table, and here he is sharing a drink with a slave. There was a sharp blow. The chair was moved, causing the creaking of its legs to be heard. The brunette jumped up and declared that she needed to take her leave. Heading for the exit, she only threw out an inconspicuous, "I have business entrusted to me by the master." The feast continues in the hall. It is gradually getting dark outside, but the subjects do not even think about leaving until the ruler announces that it is time for him to go to prayer. Blue-Eyed continues to drink wine. With each sip, her thoughts become more and more confused. Kazan behaved unexpectedly when he decided to pour her from the jug. Before that, he did not pay any attention to her. The brunette watches the princess closely. He dares to notice that such moments have not happened for a long time. The last time it happened was at one of the holidays in Parshan. Leaving his glass on the table, he pours himself some wine. He states the fact that you still don't tolerate alcohol well. It seems that nothing has changed. The girl looks away. She is a little ashamed. You can hear a request to forgive her. I just didn't expect that we would spend time together like this. My consciousness is completely clouded. There is no way back. The red-eyed man reaches for the glass. They should stop before it's too late. The heroine steps back, not allowing him to grab the object. She is serious. The beauty objects, noting that she can drink more. It is not a problem for her. The expression on the gentleman's face shows that he does not trust what was just said. The girl hadn't drunk for quite a long time. Even when she had the opportunity, she always refused. We agreed on something, remember? It was once decided that the princess would drink only in the presence of Sindar, but she thought that he had died, which is why she did not even expect that she would drink. They are alone, and even though there are many people in the room, the moment freezes, as if there is no one else around. Ilona feels as if they have returned to the old days, when everything was different. More than 7 years ago, the hero picked up his girlfriend from a party. Then he carried her on his shoulders and insistently asked her never to drink in the company of other people. Parshan does not tolerate alcohol very well. That day, the girl promised that she would definitely keep her word and never drink again. She wanted people to trust her. The woman remembers the old days, and she is surprised only by the fact that Kazan himself has not forgotten, because it seems that in his situation, all this no longer had any meaning at all. The young man looks at the beautiful face of the princess. He wants to ask a question directly, but he can't. He is interested in what makes the beauty so happy, since she smiles radiantly. The expression on his face changes. The king frowns. 7 years, long years that he spent hating Ilona, reflected on his psyche. However, for some reason, at the moment when they are together, all these feelings of the year seem meaningless. Blue-Eyed distracts from thoughts. She asks directly if Kazan knows about their future. She still does not understand why he refused to go to the temple of God Lu. Aren't you interested in what kind of future awaits us? She asks, although her tongue is very much tied. The young man turns away. He mentioned that he does not want to discuss such things. The woman will not give up so easily. She goes to the bitter end, asking what will happen if the king ever refuses in danger. Ilona is asked if she will be angry. The answer is a negative nod. The hand reaches out to the gentleman's shoulder. The girl continues to smile pleasantly. She tries to pronounce all the prepared words correctly. She again remembers the past years. The heroine spent 7 years in the tower. They dragged on endlessly. But all this time, she missed her lover madly, thinking that he was dead. The young man died in her arms, so this greatly undermined her condition. In captivity, the beauty had no entertainment. Then, every day she wrote in a diary, imagining that these notes were intended for Kazan. It seemed to her as if they were really talking. It seems that consciousness has become completely clouded. The beauty wearily leans her head against the man's hand. If you read the notes, you will surely believe in my sincere feelings for you. The red-eyed man looks at the girl. His eyes are mixed with anxiety and questions. He really wanted to read everything that the heroine wrote, but he didn't have time to ask yet. The princess fell asleep. The feast was coming to an end. As a rule, all week it began early in the morning and ended late at night. Alcohol had a stronger effect. The young man listened to the conversations of his subjects. It became quieter around. No one has left yet. The gentleman is the first to get up. He picks up Ilona in his arms, doing it as carefully as possible. He goes down the steps, straight to the path in the hall. Before he goes anywhere, he informs me that he will leave the throne room first. I still need to prepare for prayer, so I think I'll leave now. Some blinked their eyes in surprise. They did not believe that in front of them was a master who was hugging a slave. Usually, he did not show any attention to any of the female sex, even to high-ranking girls. Before leaving the hall, the young man turns to Tortan. He asks him to take care of the cleaning. It is necessary that everything remains clean. That will be right. And then, everything needs to be checked again. The conversation turned to ordinary things that were brought from Parshan. After all, a great deal had been taken from the palace after the country had been defeated. The general was ordered to try to find something resembling a diary. Everything had to be brought. Any notebook or book had to be checked, and in detail, so that nothing was overlooked. One of the knights asks what will happen if they still can't find what they want. The ruler says that in that case, they will have to send people to search in Parshan itself. Tortan throws out, "Yes, I understand. It will be done." Irid managed to return back. She had to calm herself down, and only after that she was able to approach. In her hands is a jug with a drink. She smiles, greeting the gentleman, hoping that they will be able to talk. The young man doesn't pay attention. He passes by, pretending that the girl doesn't exist at all. Something inside him turned over. Sindar was never famous for his love for others, but at that moment he seemed especially cruel. The girl clenches her teeth from anger and resentment. She would like to say something, but again, she has no right to do so, which cannot help but irritate her to the fullest extent. Kazan went down the corridors to the slave's room. He went inside and carefully lowered the lady onto the bed. There were also 2 maids there, whom he almost immediately chased away. "Well, get out of here, quickly!" Before leaving too, the gentleman carefully examines the lady's calm face. She had long since fallen asleep, but then she begins to toss and turn. Her lips are dry, and she quietly moans, beginning to call Sindar by name. He would like to know what is going on in the beauty's head, but he can only watch from the sidelines. The blonde quietly asks the young man not to die. It is obvious that she is having a bad dream, or perhaps it is a memory from the past. The gentleman gently touches the girl's shoulder with his hand, as if he wants to calm her down a little, but he understands that he won't be able to fully change anything. For some reason, the heroine was transported to the time when, after what happened at the auction, the young man ended up in the hospital. He lay on the bed while the princess sitting next to him prayed that he would not die. Then the prayers were answered. The man opened his eyes and turned them to the girl sitting on the floor. Then for the first time, he realized that this new part of his life had begun. The brunette didn't find the strength to say anything. The girl fell asleep anyway. He touched her hand with his fingers one last time and then turned around to leave. They could talk the next day when the effects of alcohol had passed. Sindar goes out into the corridor, where Irid meets him. She smiles, noting that she had been waiting for the man for quite a long time, and now he has finally decided to return. He spent quite a long time in the slave's room. The Padishah smiles, trying to be as friendly as possible. She offers to take the master to his chambers, where he can rest peacefully after this day, and then go to prayer. The man raised an eyebrow in surprise. He asks why Iris was sent to help. Usually he was escorted by servants, or he went to his room on his own. The beauty gently touches the gentleman's forearm with her hand. This has always been her job. She just hasn't always done it conscientiously. Now it's time to change that completely. The girl seemed to stick to the gentleman, her voice noticeably lowered. While she continues to tell the story, she reminds that in the evening the young man still has to pray. It will take quite a long time. Looking from under her eyelashes, Irid continues. Before the hero leaves, she would like to personally help relieve fatigue. Judging by the movements, the lady had long ago decided in what specific way she was going to calm the ruler. Padishah has been around longer than anyone else. She is the one who knows how to make Kazan feel good. The man does not share the lady's attention. He abruptly grabs her hand, forcing her to stop. Anger seethed in her scarlet eyes. He did not understand how the assistant dared to touch Sindar's body. Everyone knew that it was forbidden to approach a sacred person or even speak without permission. And here the girl decided to test someone else's patience. The man slightly pushes Padishah away. She should move away. I allowed you to be my assistant only because there were not enough hands during the war. This did not mean that a beauty is allowed more than everyone else. They are on equal terms. Before leaving, the hero gave a final warning. In memory of his service, he would turn a blind eye to the girl's mistake. However, if it happens again, she should prepare for the consequences in advance. Aggression only appears when the master disappears from sight. Biting her lip hard, the girl asks herself why that slave can do everything. But she can't. This is complete injustice. The brunette is unable to stand the way she was treated. She served the master for many years, and the Parsian woman does nothing but sleep with the high priest, meeting with him behind Sindar's back. Suddenly, a realization comes to mind. In fact, the lady has an ace up her sleeve. Bowing her head, she turns to Kazan again. She asks for forgiveness for having committed a mortal sin. She promises that she will not do it again. The beauty assures that she could not wish anything bad. She just wanted to calm the man's nerves and anger a little. Her facial expression is feigned, but it seems that the interlocutor did not notice this. The brunette tries to be sincere and suggests that the gentleman dine at the Malachite Palace. He will certainly need strength after all the time he will spend on his knees. This is not an easy burden. After spending time with his beloved slave, the rest will be much more pleasant. Padishah knows what she's talking about. The red-eyed one thinks for just a moment, and then nods. Not a bad idea. The brunette agrees. Everything will be exactly like that. Just the thought of spending time with Ilona later makes him slightly happy, even though showing true emotions in public is considered illegal. Yes, sir. The assistant agrees once again. No one knows what she has in mind. Only she understands perfectly well that the situation with the party girl will be changed. I will not leave this just like that, she promises herself. Morning comes. The sun gradually rises into the sky. Because of its bright rays, the heroine has to forcefully open her eyes. She looks around, but her gaze remains clouded. The woman feels terrible. She does not remember the last time she felt such acute feelings. It seems that she drank too much at the banquet, even though she was in the company of Sindar. Her hand touches her temple, and her eyes close again. Ilona tries to brush off the pain, but it's really hard. She doesn't have time to feel bad, so she'll be out of order. A knock is heard. Someone again, like last time, starts throwing stones at the balcony. This makes the lady get up with difficulty and go outside. As expected, Aslan was found under the windows, in the bushes. As usual, he had thrown the hood of his robe over his head to attract as little attention to himself as possible. Well, is it time to go? After the slave girl had put on her clothes, they went down to the garden and then out of the royal palace. Noticing the girl's poor condition, the acquaintance worriedly asks if she is okay. The green-eyed man smiles kindly. There are rumors that the beauty overindulged at the banquet. He hands over some drink. assuring that after a few sips the lady will feel better. She thanks him. It's a bit of a shame that rumors of something like this have spread, but it seems that shame cannot be avoided. The priest laughs. All the ministers only talk about this, that Lord Cinder personally carried out the drunken slave. What she heard stirred the girl up. She immediately stopped drinking and, having cleared her throat, turned to her interlocutor. She asked if Kazan would have any problems because of her. The answer was simple. Who knows how it will go further? Aslan is skeptical about the situation. For you, madam, it is more of an opportunity. He does not explain what exactly he means when he talks about something like this. In any case, they approach the temple. The man smiles and points to a small building. It doesn't look rich, but the white walls really do match the blue roofs, creating a nice color scheme. The lady asks if it's true that monks pray there. The blonde himself knows that the place is rather modest. There is nothing he can do to avoid seeming rude. His companion quickly finds the right words. This place has its own charm. Aslan does not want the maiden to feel uneasy. He says that there is no need to be so careful. The temple has a small budget, so little attention is paid to the appearance, while the bulk of the expenses are focused on the interior improvement. Blue Eyes understood the meaning behind the explanations without any prompting. She can't help but feel sad and hurt at how Lugh is not honored in Astra. The time comes to go inside. On the way there, the girl does not stop asking questions. She becomes interested in why Kazan hates the master. He shrugs his shoulders. It is a rather complicated story as such. The green-eyed man cannot tell about the future, because otherwise the whole cycle will be broken. However, he can quite afford to tell about the past. He asks if the lady wants to hear the whole story, and she nods readily. Sindar has always been special, and from childhood, the priest can compare the young man to such a little old man, because he always grumbled. The interlocutor smiles and asks again. She finds it cute. Unfortunately, precisely because of the man's peculiarity, it took quite a long time to become friends with him, although later, when they developed a normal relationship, the boys even played hide-and-seek together. The young man continues. He understands the gentleman. In general, his story makes him understand him more, especially since there are many enemies in his position. It is difficult to trust someone. Problems arise over time. The boy was the youngest prince of the castle. He had always disliked the temple. Even in the past, he was not particularly eager to come to the territory, or, even worse, to praise the god Lugh. He did not see the point in it and resisted with all his might. The history of the young man's family is quite complicated. Sindar's mother was supposed to take Aslan's place, becoming the head priestess of the temple. The girl asks again in surprise. She never expected to hear such information. The green-eyed man tells all the details. The woman was eager to rule the monastery. However, since she became the king's wife, she could not take the position of high priestess. She chose this path herself. It suited her. The woman was always sweet and very gentle. Everyone respected her, even those who did not know her personally. They simply liked her and liked her approach to her subjects. The master also liked her for a reason. Besides everything, Kazan's mother was an incredible beauty. It was impossible to take that away from her. The blue-eyed woman nods. She begins to like this story. Aslan approaches the entrance. He asks the lady to hurry. They don't have much time left. There is no way the master will notice that the slave is missing, and if he finds out where she went, the situation will get even worse. It's scary to even imagine. The blonde couldn't stop thinking. All the thoughts in her head were completely mixed up. She spent a huge amount of time with Kazan, but she didn't know anything. It was beginning to seem that she simply hadn't managed to earn his trust. Perhaps she was only loved in words. A voice is heard. It makes the beauty break away from her thoughts. A nun approaches and asks why the stranger was called. The man asks not to be surprised. It is all God's will, Aslan asks to open the door to the dungeon. The brunette snorts. Even if the budget is cut. It doesn't bother me at all. She tries to appear unperturbed. The gentleman quietly explains. The acquaintance often grumbles. But in fact, she is a very kind person. The disgruntled voice is heard again. She asks to stop with the pleasantries, and then recommends to watch your feet so as not to accidentally fall. A long, dark staircase is visible below. The priest asks the lady not to be offended. The nun speaks this way to everyone, regardless of status. The princess smiles, noticing that she is a nice person. The two begin to descend the steps. The further they go, the darker it becomes. The gentleman asks the beauty to watch her feet and asks her to be as careful as possible so as not to fall. She nods. Yes, of course. Ilona kept waiting for them to finally arrive at the place, and then they stood before an open space filled with light. Aslana says, "Welcome." They got there quickly enough. The sanctuary of the Lu Temple is unusually beautiful. Taking off her hood, the heroine walks forward. She looks down. There is a stream of water. It is impossible to hold back an enthusiastic sigh. The beauty is really worth it. The priest goes first. He knows where to go and what needs to be done, to understand what to do next. First, you have to find out if God Lu will accept you. The lady clarifies. She didn't know that it happens that someone is rejected. God loves people only with a pure soul. Smiling, the blonde asks to confess in advance if there are any sins. The woman lowers her gaze in embarrassment. Lately, to be honest, I have been a little undernourished. Coming closer, the beauty looks at her reflection. She is offered to try water from the spring. For some reason, fear arose inside. After the information that God may not accept her, there is no way back in any case. Putting her hands down, the heroine scooped up some water. Almost immediately, she washes her face and then takes a sip. Her eyes immediately widen. The taste cannot be described in words. It is special. Turning to Aslan, the princess notes that the water is very sweet. The man nods. Only he knows what this means, because he has been serving at the temple for many years. During this time, he has seen a lot. Bowing his head, the blonde crosses his arms and says that this is a good sign. It means that God accepts the princess. Then he promises that everything will work out only if she listens to all the instructions. The man points to the maiden's hands. In her hands is the future of Ashatra. Although she does not quite understand what this will all lead to, it seems as if, in a reflection, on the surface of the water, a beautiful city is visible. Many lives and the prosperity of the country depend on the slave. She is the one who will surely be able to change a lot. She only needs to move forward and decide to make the future brighter and more pleasant. The young man lowers his voice. It's time to tell the not-so-good news. Not everything will always go smoothly. The girl will inevitably have to face death. But one should not forget about what can be gained through such a test. The man asks to never be afraid of the desert. Usually the sand sea is considered not only a beautiful sight to behold, but also an incredibly dangerous place. However, in the case of the princess, everything will be fine. A sad look falls down on the beautiful, sparkling water. Ilona thinks about death. She would be lying if she said that this word does not frighten her. She already experienced something similar when she thought that Kazan died at the hands of Antonio. An incredibly loud knock is heard. Someone has entered the vault. A figure is standing in the shadows. But as soon as the person steps forward from the stairs, it becomes clear that it is Sindar. Angrily clenching his teeth, he calls out to Parshan. Some time ago, the young man was at the altar. He had been praying for more than an hour, exactly as was required after the feast. Everything began to blur before his eyes. The brunette began to think about how much time had passed. Standing up, the hero stretches slightly. His body is numb. The day had been tough, but he had had worse days. In any case, the prayer was over, which meant he could go and rest. Ilona, and only she comes to mind. Her smile always warms the soul. Even through hatred, Cinder wonders if the slave is waiting for him, and if she will be glad to see him after so many hours. The sun was shining brightly outside. It had already risen into the sky a long time ago. The brunette got ready and then went outside. Tortan was already meeting him. The two of them set off, following through a beautiful garden. The hero does not want to linger, because he wants to quickly go to the castle where the princess is. In the courtyard is one of the maids, next to whom is Irid. They immediately turn around when they realize that Sindar has approached them. Bowing respectfully, they greet the master. Before heading to Ilona, the young man would like to have lunch, as Padisha suggested to him when they were talking. The general orders to escort the ruler, but he is timidly refused. Forgive me, but lunch is not ready yet. The brunette doesn't seem to be upset at all. He says that he will wait inside, and the food will need to be brought when everything is ready. The maid, as if confused, began to stutter, saying that dinner is ready. There is no need to go anywhere. The woman almost immediately falls to her knees and bows her head. She follows Iris's example. The brunette begins to speak, while the one sitting next to her asks for forgiveness. The slave that the master is looking for turns out to be not in the palace. She has gone somewhere. Immediately, realizing that the man is about to ask another question, the assistant explains that she cannot say the reason because of the ban. The brunette turns a displeased look. His scarlet eyes are blazing. He expects a detailed answer, no matter what. The maid does not want to be tortured. She says that the slave was taken by the minister. He came earlier, and the two of them left through the back exit, doing everything so that no one would notice. But the assistant still understood where they were going. The ruler becomes even more angry. He asks again if this is about Aslan. And it is. This makes him angry. Cinder understands that he will have to go to the temple. He is not going to sit back and do nothing. Torton is ordered to bring a horse. The brunette nods. He does not dare to refuse. In everything he should always obey only Sindar. There will not be much time left to get to the church. Iris continues to sit on her knees. She begins to smile nastily, because she understands that her plan seems to have succeeded. She does not suspect that she herself will receive a reprimand. The master turns to the assistant. The conversation turns to what should be done with the negligent maids and managers. Everyone will be given 5 lashes. There is no escape from corporal punishment, in which they beat with a stick. The brunette immediately freezes. Her eyes widen in horror and incomprehension. What did she deserve? Something like that. Kazan turns to leave. He no longer wants to talk, immediately jumping up. Padisha runs after him. She shouts that what is happening cannot be called fair, because one way or another, they did not have the strength to stop the minister. Red-Eyed knows that Aslan is quite powerful, but is sure that there were ways to specifically bypass his desire to take Ilona with him. Clenching his teeth, the man reminds that there was an opportunity to report the news immediately and not lure him with lunch. Irid is left with nothing. Now that the gentleman has arrived at the church and gone down to the sacred spring, he is not going to hold back. He warned the pair that they should not meet, even back when the acquaintance came to the main hall to tell them about the future. Ilona tries to justify herself. She is afraid of what will happen to her after they return to the castle. Aslan remains calm. He smiles, as usual, and then greets the man and offers to follow closer to the source. Kazan, for the last few years, has not visited the temple once. This is his first visit since he was crowned. The red-eyed one does not want to listen to anything like that. He orders silence. He would gladly kill the priest on the spot. The blonde always remains calm, but this doesn't quite suit him either. He asks to be careful. After all, they are in a temple, and insults can bring great trouble, from which there is no way to wash off. A smile freezes on his face. The familiar one is still as sharp-tongued as before. The priest is not going to take this as a compliment. He still offers to listen to the prophecy, since the ruler has already descended to the source. Kazan stares. He doesn't look away, but he won't answer either. Then he turns to Ilona, ordering her to come to him more quickly. All this time, she continued to stand quietly next to Aslan. The girl turns to the priest and quietly promises that she will never forget his words. She hopes that she will be able to survive what awaits her in the near, and perhaps in the distant future. Looking after the beauty, the young man only asked her to take care of herself. There is nothing more important than taking care of yourself first. He already understands how it will all end, because the gentleman was really too angry when he came to the temple. Kazan grabs the heroine by the hand and pulls her forward. She tries to break free, but soon realizes that there is no point in resisting. All that remains is to ask the young man to slow down a little and walk a little more slowly. The blonde sadly looks after the departing couple. He asked to treat the slave a little more carefully. However, his requests were definitely not heard. Time passed. As soon as the two arrived back to the castle, the young man shoved the girl into the room and threw her on the bed. She understands that it will only get worse, but is ready to start justifying her actions. The blonde apologizes. This is not the first time. She is used to it. She just wanted to know more about their future. The gentleman is not satisfied with the answer. He asks what of it. because even if you know the whole story, you still won't be able to change anything. Blue-Eyed asks not to say that. Unlike her companion, she believes that in the future, it will be possible to change at least something. For now, this is the only thing she can do. Crawling closer, the heroine carefully grabs the man's clothes. She almost begs, "Please don't destroy my hopes." The brunette snorts. He wonders how it happened that Aslan began to carry hope with him. The lady didn't think she would have to explain, but she was quite prepared for it. The priest was the only one who showed kindness to the Deva. Neither Sindar nor anyone else listened to her, and didn't even want to pay due attention. The time comes to tell the whole story behind the feud between Aslan and Kazan. He says that the guy approached him in the same way at first, as his only friend, and also showed kindness that no one had ever given. The blonde even made the hero believe him, and when he completely trusted him, he allowed Sindar's mother to die. The girl asks again in surprise. She expected to hear anything, but not this. The man clenches his fists tightly. Even after a long period of time has passed, he still feels an incredible surge of anger, because if it weren't for Aslan, they could have saved his mother. The voice breaks, starting to stutter. The princess whispers, "It can't be like that." It seemed to her that the master respected the one who was supposed to become the main priestess. The story that the priest told, on the contrary, was not bad. The red-eyed one finally explodes. He becomes even more aggressive, and although the lady begins to try to calm him down, she does it too late. In any case, she has no way back. The hero rushes forward, knocking the girl onto the bed. He suddenly takes out his belt and ties Ilona's wrists with it. "I don't want to hear another word from you. From now on, they will only move on to actions." The brunette will not be able to forget how it all happened. He will watch the lady closely, so that she will not even try to escape again. From this moment, she is forbidden to leave the bed. She will have to be punished. The next order sounds more frightening, because the hero takes the whip in his hands. He tells the maiden to turn around. She, in response, asks in confusion what is happening. It seems she did not understand what it means to be a slave. The master is going to explain it to her. The whip in his hands makes you want to run away. The man promises to show what happens when you don't obey your master. Next time, the duties will certainly be performed in the best possible way. Ilona continues to ask questions. She begins to think that it is all because she went to Mr. Aslan's temple. She knows that she was wrong not to say where exactly she was going, but there were reasons for this. The lady understood that what she was about to do would definitely not please the ruler, but for some reason, she still went to that place. The priest's words turned out to be more important, and Parshan doesn't even know what kind of person he is, what his nature and intentions are. Those terrible moments still remained in his head. If it weren't for Aslan, the boy's mother would have remained alive, but she was gone, which he would regret until his last days. The brunette hits the bed with a whip, a few centimeters from the slave's body. It's her own fault, so now she has to turn around. Their conversation will be short from now on. The reprimand has already been given. The girl looks at the gentleman with fear. She understands that things will only get worse. She cannot run away. She will have to obey one way or another. Ilona turns around, doing as she was told, but continues to beg to be left alone until the very end. Kazan runs his hand down her back and then whispers softly to make her body relax a little. It's better not to twitch, because otherwise it will only hurt more. The young man doesn't want to hit the girl. However, this doesn't mean that he won't do something else. The hero grabs her throat with his hand. He says that the girl, like a slave, should simply obey her master without complaint. Ilona does not have her own will. From the moment she got to the castle, everything ended. The blue-eyed girl feels the man's palm grasp her below. Again, through her moans, she almost begs to stop. Her voice is completely hoarse. Kazan doesn't think about stopping, pain or pleasure. "You must accept everything that I give. Is it really necessary to go that far?" the lady asks. Sincerely not understanding, she was just concerned about their future and wanted to know more. The young man thinks that it doesn't matter. No matter what the future is, they were born to hurt each other. That day, Sindar took Parshan again and again, not even allowing her to properly catch her breath. Pleasure mixed with pain, they replaced each other like pages of a book, not allowing her to get used to it. Her consciousness was so clouded that the lady could not understand what was happening. The sensations were too sharp. The only conclusion she made was that Kazan was thirsty for her screams. All this lasted for long hours. The girls were completely exhausted, and she herself did not notice how she fell asleep. She was left alone, and it seemed that in the morning it would be calmer. But that night she had a strange dream. There were many different animals in the dream, but mostly lions and wolves. They seemed to be made of sand and tried to pounce on the beauty. Parshon had to run away. But the road in the desert seemed to become longer. The beauty ran, hoping to the last that very soon she would be able to get out. A figure appeared in the distance. When the lady got closer, she immediately realized that Kazan was standing in front of her. Screaming helplessly, the woman stretches her hands towards the Ashatrian, pressing closer. She asks for help, but for some reason there is no answer. The man's body is like stone. The usual warmth does not emanate from him. Everything changes. The lady hits her head on the wall. She opens her eyes and looks around. It's all strange, because the body has moved to the tower. Someone enters the room again and again. It is none other than Kazan. He repeats the same thing as before. We are born to hurt each other. The gentleman went to the main hall early in the morning. No one else will do his job. Cinder is informed that the border is becoming unsettled. Public unrest is intensifying. First of all, the young man asks what Harnik has been doing all this time. Torton reports that the assistant is trying to suppress the uprising by force, but this only increases the number of victims. And, unfortunately, there is no success. Brunette begins to understand that he will have to go to the border on his own. Irid tries to dissuade him. Can my father handle it? Or maybe it would be better to entrust the matter to General Torton. Red-Eyed waves his hand. He understands better what needs to be done to achieve the effect. To calm the people, I have to go myself. The other option won't work. According to the general, all this time the chancellor tried to suppress the people with violence. But this is not what the people need. They need understanding, which only the ruler of the country can provide. Torton does not dare to contradict the master. He bows his head and promises that he will prepare everything for departure. He asks how long the man will be absent. About 2 weeks will pass before he returns. Changing the subject, the young man asks if what he ordered to look for was found. He is told that the search continues. The thing is a stack of papers in a leather cover. Before entrusting the matter to the soldiers, the general warned that the thing was different from what could be produced in a Shatra. Irid ponders what they ordered to look for. No one tells her. The woman is interrupted from her thoughts. The gentleman cannot help but ask how things are going with Ilona. The brunette explains. The girl still refuses to eat in protest. Nothing has changed. The girl needs special food. Some dishes were specially brought to her from her home country, and they even gave her a special medicine to make her feel a little better. But the girl continues to pretend to be sick. The gentleman nods. He has received all the information he needed. Iris. Bring 2 teas to restore strength. Please. She asks again in surprise. Is it necessary to bring tea to the Malachite palace? The image of Ilona appeared in his head. The young man remembered how he treated her the last time. It is not surprising that she does not want to communicate with him or anyone else from his servants. Evening comes. The beauty sits in the room in complete silence. She carefully watches how the wind flutters the curtains. A little beautiful moonlight gets inside. The blue-eyed one lowers her sad eyes. Kazan came to visit the girl. He is sitting on the sofa on the other side of the room. He is tired of sitting in silence, so he calls the girl to him. Irid, as she was ordered, brought 2 mugs of tea, so it was time to drink a little. The beauty does not answer. She continues to look sadly at the floor. Nothing changes. Exhaling discontentedly, the gentleman gets up and goes forward to the window. He opens the curtains and looks at the garden under the balcony. It's time to inform you that the young man will soon go on a journey. He won't be able to come for some time. An uprising has begun in the border region. You need to go personally and sort everything out as soon as possible. The blonde finally looks up, which means that the young man will fight, if necessary. He will have to pacify the people by force, although initially it was planned to try to do everything as calmly as possible. Red-Eyed decides not to talk about his plans anymore. He told Irid to prepare food not like in Ashatra, but like in Parshan. These are rare dishes. They should not be missed in any case, because such generosity should not be expected often. The lady feels that everything is going cloudy in her head, as if she didn't hear half of what was said. The man exhales with displeasure. He turns around and grabs one of the mugs in his hand and says, "Don't sit like that, have a drink." The young man begins to explain that this is tea for restoring strength. He is interrupted. The beauty wants to know what will happen to her if Kazan suddenly dies. This question has been spinning in her head since the moment the young man told her that he was leaving. It seems that the most logical option is that the princess will also die. The ruler angrily clenches his teeth. He leaves the cup of tea in the woman's hands. If she is so curious, one can hope for death and for one's freedom. The next day comes. The man left Ilona all alone and went to prepare. It's time to leave. Torton reports that everything is ready and done as the master asked. The brunette thanked him for the work done. The general understood that there was no point in wasting time, but explained that since the hot season had arrived, it would only be possible to move around in the dark. It is obvious that the campaign will be very long and will take more than 2 weeks. The same question that Ilona asked pops up in her head again. She was afraid that she would also die, only on the castle grounds, if the ruler never returned. The gentleman approaches the horse. A harness and a saddle have already been put on it. Without thinking twice, the hero jumps on the horse, and behind him, all the rest of the squad that he takes with him immediately become active. Torton is asked to avoid movement in the sun, but not completely, only at midday. The time on the road must be shortened. The campaign will be completed at all costs in 15 days, no more. Irid found something to do. She stayed in the castle and went to the basement storage, which contains important documents and many other things, including those brought from Parshan, captured by Ashtra. The knight descends after the lady. He did not take the lantern with him, since one copy is in the hands of the lady. You must keep secret the fact that I opened this passage for you. After all, I did it in secret from the others. The woman asks if she really looks like someone who would break the word she gave not long ago. When she becomes queen, will not forget kindness, and will definitely give a reward to someone who helped her in her difficult hours of need. The guard nods. He smiles, because he can't wait for the day to get what he deserves. Then I'll stay on guard. He's going to go up, leaving the lady alone with a huge number of scrolls and various boxes. The Padishah did not go to the vault just like that. She was worried after giving the order, knowing that a slave would not just ask to find some paper. Now she knew that she was obliged to find the document faster than the knights. What the lady has already seen in Parshan is clearly different from what they are used to in Ashatra. The brunette is going to figure out on her own what they are looking for by order of the ruler, especially if it is related to a slave. They have a special relationship with Kazan. This video is visible to the naked eye. An active search begins. Book after book flies off to the side. Ilona said that she was harassed before her arrival, which means the thing is probably old. Finally, after some time of searching, the chancellor's assistant came across a diary in an antique binding. As soon as her eyes ran over the first lines, incredible anger rolled over her. This slave cannot be left alive. The next morning, in order not to waste a single day, Iris went to Parshan's chambers. She kicked the door open, bringing with her several more servants. The blonde was lying on the bed, looking completely lifeless. She had become completely emaciated. The brunette raises her voice when she orders, "Get up and sit down. It's time to stop constantly lying around exhausted." It turns out that a dish from Parshan's homeland was specially prepared. Until then, the lady could not understand why. For the sake of some girl like a slave, she had to drag herself all the way to Omar's main trading caravan and buy the necessary products there. The thought occurs to her that the name Omar is familiar to the lady, but she doesn't have time to understand anything because she is being shouted at again. It is simply unacceptable to drag out time any longer. The food also risks getting very cold. The chancellor's assistant menacingly promises that if the beauty doesn't start moving, they will start shoving all the food into her mouth by force. The blue-eyed girl nods. She sits down in front of the tray and picks up a spoon. The master ordered Parshan to eat everything to the end. He even asked to cook a strange yellow soup. Looking at the plate, the heroine smiled slightly. In front of her was her favorite dish. The lover remembered this. Gradually, the heroine begins to absorb the food, but she is still too weak to eat everything. Irid snorts again. I gave you something valuable, and you are just picking at the plate. This is unacceptable. As soon as the meal is over, the beauty will be assigned a task. After all, you have to pay for food, even when you are imprisoned in a foreign country. Half an hour later, the maids arrived. They brought with them a bouquet of some white flowers. They were not tied, so they scattered across the table, which was located right in front of the sofa. The brunette sat down opposite. She states a fact when she says that all this time the slave did nothing, just lay in the room all day. Now she will be assigned small tasks on a daily basis. The beauty looks down at the flowers that need some work. The plant is called Kireli. The leaves need to be trimmed to make everything look as beautiful as possible. Blue-eyed watches as the mistress takes one of the stems in her hands. She sniffs, noticing that it really does have a pleasant smell, to give it its due. But there is no time to enjoy it. It is better to get started quickly. The woman takes the flowers. She was just about to pick up the scissors when she felt pain. Her hands began to shake. Her palms were covered with wounds. It seemed that the thorns had cut the delicate skin. Blood began to flow. Iris clicks her tongue, mockingly. You can't grab something that's covered in thorns. She's giving an ultimatum. The lady probably wants to eat normally, and since nothing else will be given for free, she'll have no choice. In order to get food while Sindar is away, you will have to process the flowers perfectly. The girl freezes in horror. She begins to understand what exactly awaits her. Heading for the door, the brunette throws, Finish before I return. There really is no way out. The blue-eyed one promises that she will try and give it her all. She is trying to find the positive side of the job. If she does at least something, there will be no time for unnecessary thoughts. The beauty continues to carefully trim the bouquet. The blood flows more and more down her palms. Everything becomes blurry before her eyes. She does not understand why her head suddenly starts to spin, and it becomes worse, more difficult to breathe. The strength completely leaves the body. The woman does not give up until the last, but she has no other option. Very soon she sinks onto the sofa, closing her eyes. The heroine lay there without strength for some time until Irid returned. She smiles, realizing that it seemed the maiden had a hard time with the task entrusted to her. The maids examine the slave, but they were not allowed to do anything. Take this girl to her chambers, as if she was not allowed until she woke up. She is His Majesty's favorite, after all. Kazan arrived at the border a few days later. It was night outside. The moon had risen in the sky. The man thought only of Alona. He hoped that she was not continuing to suffer, and had finally started to eat well. The gentleman thinks about what they will have to do next. A strategy is needed. Torton appears behind him. He has arrived to report what he managed to find out. The reason for the People's Rebellion was found out. In fact, it was not obvious. The local residents could not pay the usurious interest rates, and as a result, unfortunately, found themselves in complete poverty. The moneylenders were caught and interrogated. It was not difficult, but the answer was shocking. It turned out that they were all hired by Harnuk. Having learned about this information, the residents decided to rebel. The man listens to what is being reported to him, and with each word he becomes more and more furious. He turns to his assistant and orders the arrest of everyone involved in the case, as well as the bringing of those involved and Harnuk. They will have to sort out some things. The slave lies on the bed in her room. She feels nothing except her pain, which is growing with each passing moment. She wants to call for help, but she doesn't even have the strength to open her mouth. The maid came to visit the finished one. She brought Iris with her, who asked to see more. It seems that the flower's poison is working as it should. If something goes wrong, then according to the plan, something else needs to be done to achieve the effect. They forced the slave to tend to rare flowers and did not provide normal care when she was cut by thorns and poison entered her body. The servant is obliged to take all the blame on herself if everyone finds out the truth. The maid nods. They manage to conclude an agreement. The lady will send the promised money to her family. They need it. Padisha promises that she will do as she promised. The entire amount will be paid as soon as the job is done. The woman comes closer and examines the blonde's body in the state she remains in. She will be useless when the gentleman returns from his journey. The ruler's favorite slave is dying. The brunette is already anticipating the surprise that Kazan will experience when he realizes what happened and that he can't help save her. The woman clutches the blanket with her fingers, and then she feels even worse. She whispers to herself, begging for at least someone to save her. She really doesn't want to die. It's better to live in captivity. The eyes finally close, when the beauty opens them again, as if she is transported to the distant past. Her lover stands in front of her. He asks if the pain is strong and asks her to drink medicine. When the blonde doesn't answer, he asks again and waves his hand slightly in front of his eyes. The girl doesn't know what to answer. She didn't expect to be transported into the past. Everything seems unreal. The heroine suddenly reacts. She jumps back and asks in surprise if it is really Kazan in front of her. She asks how he got into the room, and he just calmly points his finger at the window. The lady is even more surprised. "But there is a cliff there," she exclaims. The man thinks that it is not that high there. But still, this does not calm the beauty. He could get hurt, and she does not want anything to happen to him. Red-eyed calmly takes the jar in his hands. He opens it and is going to hand it over to the girl. He must come when something is wrong with his savior, as in that case. The man hands over the medicine and asks to leave quickly. Maybe not right away, but it should definitely get a little easier. This is already a good plus. The red-eyed man notices that there are strange people in the palace. The princess was simply abandoned, and they even mocked her together with the prince. The lady swallows the contents of the jar and asks not to worry. It is clear to everyone that the servants are afraid of their brother. Therefore, they do not want to help against his will. Antonio hates his sister, so he will do everything to make her uncomfortable. The blonde smiles weakly. "Don't worry, I'm already used to this kind of attitude." The brunette snorts in displeasure. He asks why the lady is suddenly so kind, and asks if she is so kind to everyone. The conversation turns to what happened after the auction. The girl pulled out the slave, and after she took him to the castle, she looked after him day and night, almost without leaving his bed. The excuse is, "You saved me, so I repaid you in kind." In the end, the lady could not completely free the young man from slavery. She is not like Antonio and does not intend to torture slaves. Human trafficking is disgusting to her. The brunette replies that he is not worried and does not care. He gives the beauty another medicine. In any case, the maiden is his savior and mistress. She herself should have understood that the young man will always be devoted. Red-eyed asks to always report everything to him. If someone offends the lady, she is obliged to tell him about it in order to receive protection. She will no longer have to worry about anything. The heroine looks at the man in oblivion. She cannot believe that this really happened to her. Almost stuttering, she sincerely thanks him for addressing her like that. Tears rolled down her cheeks on their own. For the first time, someone stood on her side and did not obey the prince. The heroine asked for forgiveness for behaving like this, but she was told that there was absolutely nothing to apologize for. Kazan kept his promise of protection. He always helped the lady hide. Usually Antonio was furiously looking for the girl, but since the man began to help her, he could no longer find her. The older brother loved to mock, but most often, he locked his sister somewhere in the basement or tower, forbidding the servants to let her out. The slave always found the heroine, and holding out his hand to her, helped her get out. One day, a new slave was brought to the estate. Knights gathered around her. She was tied up and could not even speak. The guards grinned, anticipating their true joy. There is something special about girls who did not want to obey and always stuck their noses up high. When you break them, it brings satisfaction. There are different ways. When they were discussing how exactly they would break the beauty, the princess came and ordered them to stop. There was still a very young girl in front of her. She shouldn't be treated so rudely. The collective decision was this. The mistress should not know what they were going to do. They say that the slave has a bad character, her master abandoned her, which means that they can do whatever they want with her. The blue-eyed girl doesn't understand what kind of nonsense this is. She looks at the blonde's angry gaze and begins to doubt. Kazan comes up from behind, who nods decisively, as if hinting that one shouldn't give up. The woman exhales and again turning to the courtiers declares, "She is now mine, so stop torturing her." Thus she made a decision, and most importantly, was able to muster up courage for the first time, all thanks to Sindar. Later, the girl was taken into a room. She was untied almost immediately, and they began to treat the wounds. Very soon, the young man reported that the cleaning was finished. He was praised for a job well done. Coming closer, the heroine asks if the stranger is okay. She was probably in pain. A rough voice says that everything is okay. There is definitely no point in worrying. The princess tries to be convincing. She promises that this will not happen again. She will definitely protect the slave and do everything so that she does not have to experience pain again and again. The blonde turns away. Kazan joins in just in time. He assures that Ilana is a good person. And most importantly, she can be trusted. She snorts. There are simply no good people in the palace. To show his confidence, the man says that he was also protected by the princess. She took care of him and always showed herself only from the good side, remaining the only normal person. The young man saw with his own eyes how beautiful the girl was. He could be trusted, exhaling. The blonde shoves her pride far away and thanks for saving her. There's nothing to thank her for. It's a natural step. The girl always thought that Kazan needed a friend. Because he was always alone, she smiles. I hope you will become friends. The two of them, almost in unison, say that they don't need company and they don't want to be friends. The beauty smiles nervously. She suggests that they think again, because it's not bad. Still, coming to an agreement, they begin to communicate. The conversation turns to whether they had seen each other before. Kazan says that he lived in the capital. It turns out that the slave came from there. The test of stability begins. The brunette asks what the bakery on Shargil Street 2 is called. In response, the girl snorts. The question is too obvious. It is Uncle Leodas's bakery. Every day the guy got himself a scorpion cookie there. It perfectly combined taste and quality. The princess watches what is happening. She was right. The countrymen quickly find a common language with each other. It is good that the slave has a person he can rely on. They continue to discuss where and how they spent their time. But for some reason, deep down, the girl is not at all happy. She feels a tingling in her heart. A few days later, in a dark room, the princess is alone. She moves from side to side while counting. She constantly gets confused and cannot establish the smoothness of her movements, because of which she gets very angry. The blue-eyed girl got confused in her own calculation of movements. Her legs seemed to be tangled, and with each movement, it became more difficult. All the information on the correct movements flew out of her head. A familiar voice is heard. It seems that everyone was busy. But for some reason, Kazan came. He says from the doorway that the lady is doing wrong. He remembered everything that was told to her in the lesson. The blue-eyed girl lowers her eyes to the floor and quietly asks, "Weren't you going to the city with Samira? Did you have something planned?" She doesn't want to distract the man from more important matters. The hero waves it off. More important things are next to his girlfriend, Antonio, when he showed the dance, clearly set all the boundaries and declared that if the girl does not learn the dance in one day, she will be locked in the closet. It is obvious to the naked eye that the beauty has not learned anything. She is trying to justify herself by blaming everything on the teacher, because he showed the combination only once, and that was not quite enough for her. Kazan states that he learned everything himself. He has a good memory, so it was not difficult for him, even though everything is not quite perfect. But the young man is able to show the movements. He extends his hand, offering to begin. The hero smiles, as if a weight had been lifted from his soul, because now the girl understands that she will be able to calmly prepare for the event, and that no one will do anything to her. Everything will be fine. Joining hands, they move forward along the parquet floor in the hall. It becomes a little easier. The girl feels it almost immediately. Now she does not have to worry about not knowing the movements. Red-Eyed constantly corrects, but the most important advice he can give is to move as naturally and freely as possible. She tries to do what was explained to her. For a while there is silence in the hall. Only footsteps on the parquet can be heard. The young man breaks the silence and asks why the prince hates his sister so much. It is sad, but probably because the maiden is different from her mother. The mistress's brother is the son of a concubine. The people around him always incited his jealousy. Besides, the princess can be stupid. This can be annoying. Kazan is surprised to assure that this is not true. His friend is not stupid at all. A fool would never dare to save a man from fire, but would leave him to die. A smile appears on his face. The young man is very kind, but I wonder if he treats Samira the same way when they are alone. In an attempt to throw off unnecessary thoughts, the girl shakes her head slightly. The slave, after all, has also become a friend, which means there is no need to worry. On the contrary, one should be glad that they get along and have begun to communicate well. Red-Eyed seems to sense how much the atmosphere in the room has changed. He calls Ilona. I need to show you something. It's just for the two of them, and if the princess agrees, it's time to watch. The maiden decided that it would be better to leave the next day, so they did so before bringing her to the field. The young man covered his eyes with his hands so that she would not understand where exactly they were going. In half an hour they almost got there. Finally, the palms release the lady's eyes. She looks forward and cannot hold back a surprised sigh. The whole field is strewn with purple flowers. A huge tree is visible ahead. Very beautiful. Kazan looks pleased with himself. The place is behind the palace, so no one will know about it. He offers to come together when it becomes completely unbearable to be in the castle. The blonde is warned that the field is a secret and cannot be told to anyone, not even Samira, even though she is a friend. But it is still much more important to keep it safe from prying eyes. The beauty smiles and nods. She understands everything and is not going to break her promises. Further calm meetings will become something special, which will bring the couple even closer. The couple decides that the place will be only for the two of them. Such a gesture made the lady calm down a little. She stops being jealous of Kazan towards Samira. The gentleman is at the border. He waited until Harnack was brought to him. The heads of all those involved in the incident were displayed in the square, and yet the people of Ashatra craved other heads. The chancellor is to blame for this. Sindar menacingly asks what the old man can answer to this. The man starts mumbling something about it being a misunderstanding. He was also deceived, and he didn't know what he was getting into when he was going to take money from others. Eyes glowing with fire. How dare you lie to my face? The ruler cannot believe that he is so disrespected. Surely the chancellor did not think that everything would reach the starting point. One condition is set: to give up all power and wealth and leave Ashatra, otherwise it will be bad. The master raises the blade, with which he cuts his palm. Blood flows directly onto the face of the former assistant. Sindar's choice spares no one, and it will have to be accepted in case of refusal to leave. The subordinate begins to shake and stutters, begging him from behind. I swear I will leave. The knights throw the old man away so that he no longer gets underfoot. Kazan turns away. The detachment is obliged to search the house and confiscate all property acquired over many years. In addition to all this, the obligatory condition is the deprivation of all titles. Tortan nods. He is allowed to rest for a few days and then return back to the capital of the country, along with all the soldiers. The general asks worriedly what will happen to the leader. The brunette explains that he is going to leave for the castle at night. He will go with the vanguard. There are no plans to even rest to gain strength before leaving, because there are more important things than a break. The hero has been absent from the palace for too long. He smiles because the image of Ilona comes to mind. They really haven't seen each other for more than 10 days, which makes him feel a bit of a tension. The young man is hurrying through the streets. The princess had her debut. She was very worried about the event and asked her friend to be there. They had not seen each other for too long, which meant it was high time. The hero finds himself in a garden, which is located right next to the palace. He wants to go to find the princess, but then he notices her sitting on the edge of a fountain. Next to her is some aristocrat who compliments her on the dance. The maiden showed herself at 100% when she waltzed in the hall. When the prince talked about his sister, the man could not even imagine that she would be so graceful, like a swan, dancing like a gift that was given to the lady by nature. The blue-eyed one blushes and accepts the compliment. She drinks wine from a glass. Her gaze shows that her consciousness is clouded due to intoxication. The girl says that she trained a lot. It is impossible to achieve such grace with just training. What are you? An aristocrat continues to try to impress, appearing to be a nice person. All thanks to the help of a friend, the brunette. Hearing this, smiles. Whoever that person was, he envies the one who was honored to dance with the princess. Not everyone gets such an honor. It is too rare a phenomenon. A smile appears on the beauty's face. She owes her friend even more than he owes her. It is impossible to imagine life without this person, because he means too much. The aristocrat thinks that such friendship is truly wonderful. He holds out another glass and suggests drinking to this. The lady tries to refuse. She has already received enough alcohol in her blood. The brunette continues to be persistent, which is already annoying. On such a day, it is worth drinking more. He talks about things that can happen. All of them are considered pleasant. The gentleman gives the example of a kiss and reaches for the lips. The lady tries to jump back and asks to leave, but her hands grab her by the waist. Don't move. In fact, you will like it. You just don't know yet. Kazan appears on time. He realized that there is not a minute to lose. In a calm voice, he says that Prince Antonio is looking for Ilona. The blue-eyed girl jumps up and joyfully asks again, "Then I need to go." Before leaving, the princess bows her head, as is proper. The gentleman says goodbye and remarks that it was nice to meet him and spend time together. The young man restrained his anger. They walked away, and he even put the lady on his back, because she could not walk at all. In the air she felt a little better. She had never drunk before, especially in such quantities. The heroine asks for forgiveness for accepting a glass from a stranger. She did not think that there would be such consequences. But in the end, it turned out that she almost fell into the trap with the kiss. Cinder asks the beauty to please not drink in the company of strangers anymore. He noticed that the maiden has too low a tolerance for alcohol, which makes her more vulnerable. The man wants the heroine to drink only in his company from now on, so he can be sure that everything will be okay with her. The blonde sincerely promises that she will do so if she wants drinks. The boys stopped in a field covered with beautiful flowers, because they were asked to come down. Ilona feels well, however, she thought it would be better to rest. The girl looks at the beautiful starry sky. At some point, she decides to ask if Kazan ever drank. He answers negatively. For some reason, the princess feels good. Warmth spreads through her body. The beauty wants to say something else. This makes him turn to face her. A few moments pass. The lips merge in a kiss. The man instantly blushes. He did not think that the lady would dare to do such a thing. As soon as she pulls away, she declares that she decided to kiss Kazan, not just like that, and not by accident. It was provoked by desire. It was sincere. Ilona asks for forgiveness for acting arbitrarily, but she really wanted to express her feelings. The young man reaches out to her and hugs her. "Thank you," he makes the lady surprised. Such words are incomprehensible to her. The young man saved the princess in the name of Antonio, but when he did it, he felt how angry he was with himself. He felt this wave of misunderstanding why this was happening to him. Resentment filled his heart, as well as helplessness, all because the hero could not protect the lady with his own strength. He felt incredibly insignificant and wanted everything to change. Letting go of Ilona, the man looks her straight in the eyes. He places his hand on the beauty's cheeks. He promises that from that moment on, he will try to protect his beloved and will do everything so that nothing happens to her. The war must end. As soon as the situation improves, he will take Parshan to Ashatra. His home country will definitely accept them with open arms. The brunette thought out the perfect plan. There they will be able to legally marry, and this is what they need so much. The woman's gaze clears up. She blushes even more, but no longer from the influence of alcohol. Kazan reaches for the lady's lips. "For me, this is also not a mistake," he whispers, being almost next to her face. In a moment, they merge in a kiss, and it seems that they still have their whole life ahead of them. The main thing is together. Cinder heads back to Ashatra. He left with the others late at night to reach their destination before morning. They reached the capital faster than expected. Some of the squad were glad that now they could rest a little. They had absolutely no strength left. The red-eyed one was thinking about his own things. Too many different thoughts were concentrated in his head. He and Ilona, after that conversation, walked to the southern state for too long. For some reason, the young man cannot stop thinking about what their life would have been like if everything had turned out as planned, if she had not betrayed her lover. He remembered the day when the hero was killed very well. At the appointed time he arrived at the tree, Samira was next to him, who constantly reminded him that the lady was late. The man begins to think that it is worth going to Ilona's chambers. But then the sound of horses' hooves and shouts is heard. The princess is rushing on her horses straight to the meeting place, but not alone. Antonio and several other guards are next to her. At that moment, the gentleman felt lost. He did not understand what he had done to deserve death. Obviously, the princess had really betrayed him. Samira asked His Highness to leave. Kazan understands that he should run away while he can. However, the prince turns out to be much quicker. Taking out his sword on the go, he sharply runs it across the body of the one he intends to kill. Life stops. The guy falls to the ground. A huge amount of blood flows from him. It forms a puddle. The last thing Sindar remembered was Samira running after the ruler's horse, and someone's wild cries calling out to him. More than 7 years pass. All these years, the young man hates Ilona. But after her story, he begins to wonder if she really betrayed him. Perhaps it was someone else, someone who did not want to show his true face. It is obvious that even if no one was aiming at the slave, Antonio dragged the lady along with him on his own, because only 2 people knew about that flower garden, and Samira, who would not have revealed the secret even under threat of death, was sincerely devoted. I remember those same materials about Ilona's trial that were handed over by Lord Xerox. If they were forged, perhaps it was from that moment that everything went wrong. His Majesty wants to understand what he missed, what slipped past his eyes. He does not believe that there is no chance that someone else was not involved or committed treason while framing another. Sindar understands that he should find that diary as soon as possible. Information may be hidden in it. The master approaches the slave's chambers. The maid exclaims, "We all thought that you would arrive a few days later." The maid is shaking with fear. It immediately becomes clear that something terrible has happened. The young man pushes everyone aside and rushes into the room to find out what happened in the castle in his absence. The hero almost immediately hurries to the bed and touches the girl's cold cheek with his palm. He is horrified because the appearance of her body and face is terrible. She is completely haggard. Her lips are completely dry, and her skin is incredibly pale. Falling to his knees, the gentleman lifts the girl and tries to understand what happened to her. He orders to call a doctor. And even better, absolutely all the doctors who are on the palace grounds. There is not a minute to lose. The words go nowhere. He wants the girl to wake up. However, she does not hear anything, clicking her tongue in displeasure. The hero leaves the lady alone and turns to the servant who met him at the entrance to the chambers. Sindar takes out his blade. He angrily asks who brought the slave to a terrible state, where she can barely breathe. The brunette hiccups from fear and begins to scream to be spared. She is afraid of what kind of punishment awaits her in the future. The woman attempted to escape, but a moment later the gentleman pierced her leg with a sword. He turns to the knights. "Take her to the torture room. There we will sort everything out." One of the doctors was ordered to heal the maid, but only enough so that she could not escape. Her ankles were broken, which meant she had to be careful with this. No one had ever seen the young man so furious, although everyone knew him as someone who was quite cruel. If she died without having time to tell the truth, you too would be in trouble, keep in mind. Very soon, one of the chief doctors arrived. He carefully examined Ilona and noticed that she was still breathing. The first thing that interests the man is whether someone can cure her. The diagnosis is obvious. The beauty is poisoned by Carielli's poison. The substance spreads gradually, almost imperceptibly. So if it is detected at an early stage, treatment will not be difficult and will take a short period of time. The princess's case is much more complicated. Since the poison has penetrated into every corner of the body, it is unlikely that anything can be done. There is only one option left. You will need the help of the temple and God Lu. He can grant life. The brunette never liked Aslan and everyone who works with him. But now, he understands that he is ready to do absolutely anything just to save the girl who has become so dear to him. He is going to go to that place. As soon as the door opens, the young man smells the characteristic smell of the temple. He is met by the priest, who says that he was expecting the master. Pointing his hand down, the blonde asks to follow him. The whole procedure should take place near the springs. The man recommends putting the body in a place that is near the water. He presents a plate. Lady Ilona has an incredibly pure soul. Previously, the beauty was blessed by God Lu, which means that purification is quite possible. It will be difficult, but worth it, because the main task is to save life. The green-eyed man looks at the soft surface of the water. He turns to Sindar, noting that without his efforts, nothing will work. You will have to pray daily. Only then will Lu respond to your call. The ruler agrees to do anything, only on the condition that it will save his beloved, even if it takes a long time. The hero wants to ask if there was a moment in the dream that Aslan wanted to tell. The young man does not give a precise answer, but his look speaks for itself. If the prayer is sincere, Lu will definitely answer. He does not leave his people in trouble and cares about everyone who believes in him. The brunette nods. He is counting on the priest and is going to trust him for the first time. It is time to leave. Sindar promises that he will appear again near the source the next day to begin the prayers. Stopping his acquaintance, Aslan worriedly tells him that God never accepts sacrifices in vain, and one should be careful not to kill with great zeal, just as the ruler of Ashatra usually does. The red-eyed one looks at the floor. He serves another creature, and that one, in fact, wants exactly that. So that there would be as many victims as possible, he lives in order to please Sindar and pass his sentence on deserving people. There is torture going on in the dungeon. That maid was dragged into the cell. The ruler's orders are not discussed. There are 2 more maids standing behind, and of course the manager. Khazan decides to conduct the interrogation himself. He knows that only he can extract the answers. He wants to ask how the brunette could, constantly visiting the lady, watch her gradually fade away. The maiden tries to justify herself, assuring that she really didn't know anything. She thought that the slave's poor condition was due to loss of appetite. The answer angers the master. He orders another blow. The spanking will continue. A heart-rending scream is heard again. The maid has difficulty breathing, and blood is gushing in all directions. Iris shrinks. She becomes scared, because she understands that very soon questions will arise for her too. A man approaches a brunette and looks her straight in the eyes. The girl does not want to face anger, so she lowers her gaze to the floor. She's asked, "As a court manager, what have you been doing all this time?" The beauty cannot find an answer, and this makes her lose her temper even more. The assistant falls to her knees and asks for forgiveness. She committed a mortal sin, but she was told that everything was fine with the slave. From the very beginning, the lady knew that the maid despised slaves, but she didn't think that she would do such successful things. She hoped that everything would be relatively calm, so she didn't pay attention. The words were chosen incorrectly, because now it became clear that the girl was also involved in what happened. She understood the hatred, but despite this, she entrusted the care of the former princess. The young man begins to remember that Irid was never happy with Alona either. She always found something to pick on her, and in addition to all this, she sometimes even beat her, believing that one must teach through pain. The Padisha stutters. She tries to justify herself and says in her favor that she found the slave's diary. She wanted to hand it over to Sindar. Turning to the guards, the assistant asks in a commanding tone to bring the book. The knight hurries back and forth, dragging a paper and a binding behind him. The ruler takes the thing in his hands, while the lady, sitting on her knees, continues to beg for her pardon. It won't be a problem for Sindar to deal with someone he doesn't want to see in his circle, but he remembers the priest's words. God Lu doesn't like vain sacrifices. He asks for prayers. Exhaling, the gentleman decides to deal with everything calmly. He looks at Padish and says that until the end of the investigation, she will be left under house arrest. They will not kill her. With the assistant's subordinations, it will be a different story. With the exception of one servant, from whom they will try to extract answers, they will all be branded and expelled from the capital. They will not be allowed to return under any circumstances. The young man makes it clear that he is not doing this of his own free will. There is a God before whom it is important to save face, so it is worth refraining from unnecessary sacrifices. The brunette smiles nervously. She had already thought that she would be killed. Khazan went to his chambers. He decides that it is time to read the diary. Finally, it is available to him. So sitting down on the sofa, the hero begins to turn the pages and returns to the first one. The first thing that was written turned out to be an appeal to Sindar. The beauty writes that she cannot believe that her beloved has died. She wants to hope that this is just a dream and not real reality. The woman says that if what is happening is not a dream, she will no longer be able to breathe. The girl does nothing but write about how she misses him, thinks about Khazan, and how much she loves him. The image of the exhausted girl that the master turned her into immediately appears in her head. Unable to bear it, the hero abruptly closes the diary. A wave of anger at himself washes over him. It is impossible to read such things anymore. He gets up to leave the chambers. After some time, the young man finds himself in the temple. He has long understood that he is destined to receive punishment in the form of health problems for his beloved, but he wants God to have mercy on the innocent girl. The man prays. He is going to give it his all just to make it work. He promises that he can survive dozens of wars and will accept any death. Despite the fact that the hero has a lot, the most important thing for him now is to save Ilona. He is afraid that in the end, nothing will work, and she will not be able to escape the tenacious clutches of death. The hero squeezes Parshan's palm with his hand. He looks at her closed eyes and pale face. From what is happening and the realization of how much the man screwed up, he wants to cry, because tears appear on his face. Ilona seems to be in another world. She is sinking under the water. Her body, her word becomes heavy. She is increasingly absorbed by the depth, which intends to pull her even lower. Her eyes suddenly open wide. The beauty does not immediately understand where exactly she is. Perhaps this is just a dream from which she cannot yet get out. Ahead, the very flowers that they were forced to process are visible. The woman begins to assume that she has died. And this is not even a dream. Suddenly, a familiar voice is heard. It addresses Aslan at the same time as the priest answers. Kazan is the one who cannot be confused with anyone else. The princess begins to stretch her hands forward. She wants to scream to be heard and saved. She does not want to stay underwater. Blue-eyed is about to swim up, but suddenly, she begins to feel something grabbing her legs. A dark vine wraps around her ankles. The heroine continues to try to get out. All to no avail, she will not be saved. The gentleman continues to sit next to his beloved. His eyes are filled with sadness. He gently touches her pale cheek. It seemed to him that he felt some movement. Ilona is slightly covered by water, which later recedes. Her hair dissolves, neatly covering her shoulders. The young man takes the palm in his hand. He does not want to let go of hope. It's scary to think about what the future might hold. The brunette doesn't understand how he can live on if the girl suddenly can't be cured. He can't even imagine a world without the one who always lit his way. Hating the princess, the ruler persistently wanted to keep her close to him for the rest of his life, never letting her go anywhere. The thought creeps into his head of how their life would have turned out if Cinder had believed the words of his beloved. It is sad to understand that in the events of the present, in fact, the messenger of God himself is to blame. Everything began because of wrong faith, although it was necessary to correct the situation when such an opportunity presented itself. The day when Kazan's mother died, he will never be able to forget. The woman was ill and she went to the sanctuary. She took her son with her. They were received by Aslan, who served there from an early age. As soon as the lady took a sip from the glass, she immediately dropped it and, bending over, began to gradually sink to the floor. The blonde rushes to her, not understanding what was wrong. Rita drank holy water. Such a reaction is not typical. The green-eyed man looks at the lady and suddenly realizes that the situation is different. He just wanted to ask her. When he hears the boy's cry, he asks if his mother is dying. He is afraid that everything is going wrong. The priest tries to explain that everything will be fine, but the red-eyed man doesn't want to listen to anything. He shouts again, "Why did you lie to me and promise that God Lu would save us?" He asked for his mother to be saved, but the woman had been unconscious for a long time. Everything contradicts. The young man looks at Ilona's body, which still lies motionless. He does not understand how many more dear people he will have to lose in the face of the God of life. It is as if he does not want to help. It is better to forget about the past. Even though it is difficult, the hero tries with all his might to focus on the present. He continues to ask to save his beloved. Nothing more is needed. He just wants the girl to be okay. The fingers slowly begin to move. The red-eyed man jumps up. The young man rushes forward. He calls the beauty by name. She gradually opens her eyes. Her gaze is empty. But it is important that the woman is at least alive. Kazan fell to the floor. He presses his forehead to the girl's hand. She does not understand why he has such a reaction, so she gets up to quickly let go of his hand. The ruler does not allow it. The brunette looks straight into Parshan's eyes with a warm gaze. He cannot describe the happiness he feels, all that joy. Soon the beauty got up. She went downstairs to look around. It is not clear how long exactly the lady lay unconscious. Kazan left immediately, without giving the opportunity to ask any questions. The gaze drops to the hands. The palms and fingers are not in the best condition. However, not everything is so bad. Judging by the fact that everything is healed, quite a lot of time has passed. It will only be possible to find out for sure when Aslan arrives. The priest seems to read the heroine's thoughts. He comes up from behind and greets the lady. He asks how the beauty feels and clarifies if everything is okay with her. The green-eyed man is glad that everything is fine. However, he asks that if even the slightest discomfort appears, he should immediately report it so that he can find a solution to the problem. The beauty was exposed to the poison of the Kareli flower for quite a long time, although it is good that she woke up. But long-term treatment will be required. The blue-eyed one thanks for the care. She is sincere. The hero says that, as it turned out, he did almost nothing. His Highness took over all the work. The maiden even has to ask again. She is unable to believe what is happening. The ruler sat nearby, spent time in the sanctuary day and night, praying for the health of God Lu. He practically lived in the temple. But for now, he left for a short time on urgent matters, promising that he would come back later. A question forms in her head, more than one. The lady is increasingly developing a desire to ask everything that interests her. It is hard to believe that Kazan is worried about his captive. This trait is beyond his control. Earlier, when the beauty thought that something could still be changed between them, she assumed that her lover still valued her. But that night, when he declared that they were born to hurt each other, put everything in its place. Sadly hanging her head, the woman understands that there is absolutely no point in hoping for more. Hoping that the attitude towards her as a person will finally change because of some rumors is stupid. The priest does not want to interfere in other people's relationships. He points to the sanctuary and asks them to proceed to cleanse themselves of poison. The procedure is not the most pleasant. It has a quick and effective property. The young man smiles. Especially for you, I will use a special method of treatment. He, as always, tries to cheer up. Evening comes. The beautiful light makes the girl gasp. The hero unpacks his things. He places several jars on the table near which he sits. The beauty looks around carefully. She chuckles, but does not say a word. She is very interested in what kind of healing method this is, which she has never heard of. The time comes to begin the procedure. Bright blue lights light up around. Literally, in a few seconds, the candle flame becomes exactly the same shade. It cannot help but bewitch. Ilona is asked to close her eyes. She covers her face with her hand. The priest explains that she needs to concentrate on the words that will be said to her. She should forget about all extraneous sounds. The man says that in front of the girl, there is only sand and sky. The scorching sun mercilessly burns her face. The blonde freezes. She feels as if the sun's rays are really shining on her. The lady is forced to open her eyes. She follows the instructions. For some reason, she is no longer in the temple, but has moved to a bottomless desert. She is asked if there is any water nearby. She has to look around. There is no choice. The beauty looks around in a hurry. While she continues to be given instructions, she will have to find water. She will have to ask. The woman tries to turn to Aslan. She does not understand. Suddenly, a figure appears ahead. The woman feels the wind blowing on her, which intends to wrap her body in sand, attempts to resist and shout that it is worth going to the end, remain unsuccessful. The blue-eyed woman opens her eyes. She sits up on the bed and breathes convulsively, filling her lungs with air. Aslan enters the room. He sees that the lady has already managed to come to her senses. This is great. The young man smiles and says, "We'll finish the treatment for today. A guest has come for you." The girl turns around and asks again. She thought she would stay in the temple for a while. A short girl comes inside. She greets the former princess. By order of His Majesty from that day on, instead of Irid, Miriam will be next to her. From now on, communication will not take place with Padisha. The blonde listens, but then, surprised, asks again. She sincerely does not see why the Chancellor's assistant was suddenly removed from the position of overseer. To present and tell all the details in detail, the brunette got ready later. She suggests returning to the castle as soon as possible. The ruler is already waiting for Parshan. Night has fallen outside. The stars are spread out in the sky, and the moon has risen, shining brightly. The assistant is seeing off the former princess. She obediently follows. Only one question is spinning in her head. Why is Kazan calling me? In fact, in her soul, the beauty is a little afraid. She understands that she will not hear anything good. She should not have vain hopes regarding the conversation that they will have. Mariam is the first to bow her head. Almost immediately, His Majesty jumps up and runs towards her. He stops opposite. His gaze is unusually sad. The woman wants to ask what happened. The gentleman asks the assistant to leave them alone. The girl nods politely and turns to leave the garden. The brunette asks to sit down opposite. A difficult conversation lies ahead. Ilona slowly approaches. She asks herself to calm down and come to her senses. She is, of course, glad to see Kazan, glad that they can see each other again. However, for everything to be good, it is better to stay away from each other. For Mr. Parshan, she is no longer a beloved woman. She is just a slave, nothing more. Stopping next to him, she asks, "Do not pay attention to me. Speak freely." Ilona thinks that as a slave she has no right to sit next to him. The woman asks if she needs some wine, but she is interrupted. "What are you even thinking?" Blue-eyed is worried. She finds what is happening no less surprising. The ruler wants the maiden to tell the story of how she almost died instead of pleasing him. The man didn't know that the girl was dying. He was on his business trip to the border. The silence drags on. You have to ask what makes the lady not even angry. She has no right to be angry. Alana quotes the words that a young man once told her. He put everything in its place, explaining that a slave should simply obey her master. Only sometimes she has the right to ask for something. The lady asks if she can ask for a favor. Next time, if the master wants to kill her, it is better to do it herself. It is better to die at the hands of the ruler than his courtiers. Kazan feels as if something inside him has turned over. He tries to come to his senses. The girl is about to tuck her tail between her legs, and it is obvious that she doesn't care what the young man does. She confirms his guesses. She really doesn't care. Coming closer, the hero abruptly pulls the former princess towards him, holding her by the waist. He asks if the girl is even bothered by such treatment. She should, on the contrary, be furious. Instead of trying to move away, the lady pulls her arms forward and wraps them around her neck. Do what your soul desires. After all, that has always been my duty. Turning around, the man moves away, as if he no longer wants any contact. On the contrary, he orders to go to the chambers. To the surprised question, of course, there is no answer. Kazan leaves the lady bewildered, and when he is left completely alone, he punches the wall with all his might, not understanding what to do next. It would be easier if the woman was at least angry. She always tried for the sake of their love and relationship, but in the end, she was left with nothing and also humiliated, morally broken. Time has passed. The hero understands that even if he tries to take action, he will most likely never be rewarded with forgiveness, no matter how much he wants to earn it. The next morning, Parshan is again next to the owner. Tortan came to them to discuss an important meeting that will take place very soon in the capital of Ashatra. The girl carefully studies the ruler. She cannot help but notice his obvious fatigue. Perhaps he did not sleep well at night. Something is bothering him. From the kingdoms of Bahalan comes the second prince and his companions. As far as the man knows, he has not received any news about this, and finds out at the very last moment. Tortan nods. Inviting a representative from the other side was nothing more than an arbitrary decision by Harnuk, who had already been expelled. The red-eyed man wearily says that there is no point in wasting time any longer. His Majesty orders the refusal to be sent. He is stopped. Although for the complacent decision, the Padishah should be punished, it is still worth taking advantage of the opportunity to establish relations with the kingdom. Since Parshan was captured, Bahalan, which borders Ashatra, must feel a great threat. There is a possibility that beneficial cooperation will be offered through this route. The hero thinks about it and agrees. It makes sense. The general is given an important task, namely preparing a list of questions for discussion with the prince. The meeting promises to be purely businesslike, without ulterior motives. The assistant nods. He is going to take a few hours to do everything conscientiously. As the two continue to discuss the small details, the princess steps back and covers her mouth with her hands in horror. She still can't believe that she will meet Bahalan. The woman understands that the man may remember the breakup of the engagement that happened 7 years ago. Parshan herself initiated the breakup. No matter how the heroine is perceived in the state she never reached, it is her responsibility. Everything lies on her shoulders. So if something happens, there will still be no one to blame. Blue Eyes is worried about Kazan. She is afraid that someone from the embassy will find out that he was a slave in the past. This could create a certain level of problems. The princess reflects, in general, the young man did not go outside the palace, so no one knows him. Everything is as it should be. This calms the soul a little. Harnuk is sitting in the same room with Irid. They met to discuss strategy. He is angry that nothing is working out, and blames his daughter because she was unable to charm the king. That year, Padisha boasted that she would definitely take the place of the queen. But nothing happened. The brunette screams back. She does not see her fault in this. The girl points the finger at her father. You couldn't do everything cleanly, so you got caught. The old man snorts. He doesn't like the tone in which they speak to him. Iris turns out to be wiser. She suggests stopping. There is no point in arguing, in any case. There are still ways to expand influence, so there is no point in getting excited. Unlike the gentleman's assistant, the chancellor does not understand what kind of method they have left at their disposal. The conversation turns to a trade agreement with the Bahilan embassy. The agreement was initiated by Harnuk while he was still in office. The maiden heard the news that it seemed that it would be approved, although it seemed that Sindar would never agree to such a thing. He is always extremely cautious. Jumping up and down with joy, the man asks again if this is true. The daughter nods. The person she stayed with in the palace conveyed extremely accurate information. The old man begins to anticipate what awaits them. If everything goes as it should, His Majesty may think about returning the position of Chancellor. After all, it was he who brought such a person to an agreement with Ashtra. The second prince is coming very soon. It will be quite funny to watch him humiliate himself in front of the country as a conqueror. He needs this agreement more than anyone else. The governor's assistant is ordered to keep an eye on everything. They will only need a positive result. Nothing else will do, otherwise the position can be forgotten forever. The thought of a slave comes to mind. The woman does not know what to do, so she asks the question directly. Since the royal family is coming, can Ilona be left as is? Not long ago, the girl heard interesting rumors that Bahilan and Parshan used to be on good terms, and then they moved to the stage of discussing marriage. Although the engagement was broken off, the woman was still a princess. Because of this, problems with trade may arise. Harnuk is surprised. The day comes when dear guests are welcomed in the castle. The slave stands next to the master. She is almost always within easy reach of him. The door to the main hall opens. The prince is announced, and when he enters, he thanks almost from the threshold for permission to visit the glorious place of Ashatru. Adrian Eldest Bahalanan declares that it is an honor for him to meet the ruler of the country. The look speaks for itself. As expected, the state clearly does not like the Parshan. The man gets up from the throne and walks forward. He thanks for the journey, which was not at all easy. The reconciliation of the two countries is happening for the first time in 20 years. This can become an opportunity to understand each other. The prince is glad that he is treated with respect and kindness. Kazan suggests moving to the study. They both will have a lot to say. There is no point in leaving the discussion in the throne room. Red-Eyed turns to Ilona at the last moment and says that she should also join the negotiations. Tortan asks in surprise, why? The gentleman is simply confident in his decision. Parshan will be needed during the negotiations. She will really play a rather important role. The girl does not know what to say. She looks at the gentleman, fascinated. Eldest interrupts the idol. He rudely asks if Kazan is serious. A person like Ilona should not be taken with him. She will not be needed, even if it comes to her home country. The woman was once a princess, and even then, she did not have too many rights. But now her situation has changed. She has no reason to participate in an important event. It is better to stay away. The ruler of Ashatra has his own views on the situation. Ilona is the only representative of her country. If Ashatra had not become the master of Parshan, Prince Bahilan would never have decided to establish trade relations. The conversation will be about different things, but in the end, it will come down to questions about the captured state. Adrian has nothing to say. He is silent and steps back. If only for one day the prince had the chance to treat the slave with respect, her participation would ultimately benefit everyone. This could not be denied in any way. Blue-eyed looks at Kazan with eyes full of hope. She never thought that they would stand up for her, and even invite her to be together at the negotiations. She cannot find words of gratitude. Eldest looks down in displeasure. He has to swallow his pride along with a ton of hatred just to overcome himself. In a foreign country, no one will let him choose the conditions. Upon entering the office, the beauty is removed from the heavy shackles that were on her hands and neck the whole time. Parshan cannot shake the feeling that she is not in the place where she should be, and this makes her feel uncomfortable. The woman tries to resist the urge to ask what Kazan was thinking. When he dragged her along, Adrian decides to start a conversation before they get into a serious discussion of trade, asking him to explain the situation of his country. Bahalin is known to many, but in terms of trade, it is a key center for intermediary trade between the two continents. Just recently, the ruler did everything to expand sales, even to the most distant islands. Unfortunately, his plans did not come true, because the consequences of the war completely destroyed trade, making the task impossible. The gentleman clarifies the problem. He needs to understand what it will result in. Among the goods of the Parshan region, the import of resources necessary for intermediary transactions has ceased. This is the main problem. The most urgent thing is iron ore. The former princess at the table suddenly realizes that she knows what is being discussed. For now, she decides to keep a low profile so as not to attract attention to herself. Bahalin wants the defeated state to resume the transfer of ore. Tortan is asked what he thinks about this. Everything is obvious. The first thing to do is to find out the remaining reserves and then consider the possibilities of export. Ilona raises her hand. She wants to intervene. She explains that there are so few resources left in Parshan that it is not enough for trade exchange. Export is impossible under any circumstances. Jumping up in place, Eldest, not believing, asks where such information came from. As he remembers, the girl was kept in captivity for a long time. The blonde knows better than anyone, because her brother often visited her and told her about everything that was happening. Antonio has repeatedly said that the war with Astra takes up too many resources. Parshan has processed and used most of the ore deposits, and only about 10% remains. But no more. Adrian starts screaming. He can't contain himself. Words aren't everything. Perhaps there are other intentions that are not yet known to others. Kazan has to raise his voice to calm the guest down. He offers to listen to the former princess to the end, to figure out what she is leading to. It is too early to judge, while listening to little information. The blue-eyed one is asked to tell everything down to the smallest detail. She nods in agreement. The responsibility for the veracity of the information falls on her fragile shoulders. After thinking for just a few seconds, the slave begins to speak. As far as I know, the iron ore of Parshan has already reached its limit since last year. The king wanted to find other precious materials for several years, because he understood that a more reliable resource was needed. A few years ago, Antonio sent miners to develop new mines. He made them dig to the last just to find a new source of income. And not only. Eldest interrupts the girl. He almost jumps because he senses good news. Does this mean that the new mines have been developed after all? When it comes to the resources that are in the conquered country, the lady remembers how her brother once came to her. In his hands, he had something shiny, something worthwhile, or rather a diamond. Parshan can easily tell the secret, but he understands what it will lead to. Bahalin will invade an unstable country and start his own business. The people will be exploited without fair payment. The girl failed to protect her territories from the war, but she wants to protect at least the inhabitants. They deserve something better, she states with complete confidence. No mines were found. The result remains the same. Import is impossible under any circumstances. Even if Bahalin wishes it, nothing can be done about it. Her hands are shaking slightly. The same question is spinning in her head. The lady doubts whether the people gathered in the hall will believe her. Kazan is watching Ilona most closely. A few minutes of silence pass. The red-eyed man turns to the slave and asks her to raise her head high. There is no point in her being ashamed of what she told everyone else. The blonde feels like a criminal, like someone who came from a captured kingdom. However, she has the rights of a representative of Parshan. She should remain calm. Warmth is born in the eyes. The gentleman believed what was said. And this is the most important thing. The lady does not need recognition from anyone else. The conversation then returns to the ore. Ashatra can become the ones who will supply the necessary resources to Bahalin. The prince is surprised. They said that the southern country does not export iron ore. The young man explains that this all happened because of the civil war. Since the hard times are over, everything is possible. The Lord offers to make a contract with his kingdom. Adrian is glowing with happiness. It would be a great honor for us. The slave does not pay attention to what is being discussed. She is thinking about her own. Although she is no longer a princess, she was finally able to help Parshan and its inhabitants. The negotiations were successfully completed. Bahalan is about to leave and says goodbye to Kazan. As soon as the door closes, the heroine turns to Cinder with a question. They will put handcuffs on her again, because it is time to return to her normal state. The young man comes closer and gently stroking her cheek says, "She cannot put them on. It is not necessary." The man asks to tell Miriam that iron will no longer be needed. The slave can feel free, while living a quiet life and being on the territory of the palace. Suddenly everything floats before her eyes. A terrible image appears. Sindar freezes in horror. He is afraid that something terrible will happen to his beloved. The lady asks what happened to him, but instead of an answer, the guy hugs her tightly. They will never part again.